Black people, you gotta get your shit together. Yes, you do. You gotta get your shit together. Yes, you do. You gotta get your shit together.
Subscribe, 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 subscribe. Letter TV, 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 letter TV. You will open your third eye tonight, your third eye tonight. Subscribe to the House of Consciousness. You will open your third eye tonight, your third eye tonight. Subscribe to the House of Consciousness. Letter TV, letter TV, letter TV, letter TV, subscribe, letter TV, letter TV, letter TV, subscribe, letter TV, subscribe, 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 subscribe.
All right, peace and Black Power family. Welcome to another Sonetta TV House of Consciousness production. I am your host, and we got a good one for y'all tonight. I want to make sure that y'all hear me loud and clear. This event tonight is not a debate, but it is the weigh-in. This is not a debate. This is a weigh-in for both of the brothers to feel each other out, to see what we're going to do leading up to the debate. Before this show is over, we should have a date for y'all for the debate going down. So y'all know how we do. This is only the weigh-in. Make no mistake about it. But hey, in the weigh-in, you know we have disagreements. And it may turn into a little semi-debate discussion. So understand that we are not prepared tonight to show y'all slides. We are prepared to show it, but especially Zion, but we're going to hold off on that and just give y'all a little what's going on. Okay? So without any further ado, I will introduce to you my brother Zion, and I call him the lion, the roaring lion, Zion Lex. What's going on, brother? How you doing, man? Unmute yourself. Sit. Give me some water, please, man.
All right, I got it. Can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Okay. Peace to Sonetta. Peace to the HOK family. Peace to my brother Jabari, man. It's been a while. I'm actually excited, man. One thing about me, I'm always watching. I might be on the side doing my own thing. I have a lot going on behind the scenes in terms of traveling, in terms of doing classes. But I'm always got my ears and eyes in tune to the YouTube streets, especially when our scholars are on. Jabari is one of those people that I make sure I always catch, because one thing about a person that considers themselves academically astute, you always want to make sure you keep up with those people who are carrying the culture in the right way, of which I consider Jabari to be one of those. We might have differences, but none of those differences, for me, would render his contribution invalid. I think he's an amazing contributor to African legacy, moreover. And I think our area of disagreement is mainly mythology and how much mythology may fit with history. But I think that we are both clear on our vision for Black people, moreover in the world, that we want to see ourselves liberated. So on that note, I've always had a great deal of respect for him. I want to say that this evening, we are not going to be debating. Brother Jabari and I spoke about 2 days ago on Sonetta TV Live, and Brother Jabari did mention that this dialogue would be more or less us feeling one another out, right? I guess because this is New York City, I gotta say pause to some of you low vibrational people out there,
Right. You
But
know,
this would be a conversation where we would both be getting to see where each other is at on the topic. I actually did come prepared for a full scale debate, and that's just because of the amount of time that I have spent on the dialogue. And I would love for Jabari to chime in a couple of moments because I'm I'm willing to reason in my mind. I don't know how his mind works, but I'm willing to reason in my mind that Jabari is not debating tonight per se, not because he's not ready. I don't think we could ever charge that to Jabari. He's proven time and time again that he's ready. I think he wants to know what is my new angle. And so
yeah.
I'm gonna play a nice game with Brother Jabari today because while I don't want to reveal my full hand, I still want to give enough to make for a debate. And with that, I yield.
All right. Let me go before I bring on Brother Jabari. I want to let the people know that we got the lioness in the building. She is a lioness assassin. She is like a sleeping lioness assassin. I speak of none other than Sister Neftali in the building. Make no mistake about it. She's here to see whose head she's gonna chop off. Nah, I'm only joking. But she will be giving a presentation coming up soon. Neftali. I speak of none other than Neftali. So y'all be prepared for that whenever she's ready to do her presentation. All right, without any further ado, I bring to you Brother Jabari, man, the Floyd Mayweather of consciousness, who we call and say cool. I want to let you know I got your message. I seen that joint that Reggie and Brother Unk have done to you. But when you do your presentation, say cool, make sure you call they ass out and watch them run. See, if they don't come and face you like a man, say cool, you're going to watch them run. All right? So without any further ado, my brother, your brother, the champion, Brother Jabari, is in the building. Brother Jabari, you got the floor, brother.
Peace. Let me go ahead and say that I'm honored again to speak to the Sound Editor TV studios, Black News 102 family. I always am honored to have this conversation with, really, we have to say it's not even just a national discussion, it's an international discussion of people of African descent, trying to understand how we should move forward. And so it is an honor to speak to you again. Let me say that when I say that I'm not, that this is not a debate, and I've always said this is not the debate. Part of the reason why I'm saying that is because when I debate someone, I have a full preparation of slides. That doesn't mean I have no slides. And that doesn't mean I'm saying that Zion can't show slides if he chooses to. But definitely, there are some things that I have that I would show, that I might show, to be able to explain some of the ideas that I have. There are images, there are some quotes. All of those things are things that you should expect to see. But really, we're not going to go 15, 20 minutes talking, I think, either of us. I think that would be a bit much. So you all that are sitting here need to say that you're going to recognize that we're going to have a high-level conversation. I always say, even when Zion and I were not of the same accord and we're beefing a little bit, I always say I would not have had so many conversations with Zion if I didn't think that he was an apt opponent. So, definitely I look forward to the conversation. It's been a while since we've had some deep conversations. And so it'll be great to be able to hear more of what he's expressing now. I want to talk about this new focus on Sumer that we're seeing on folks that are in the Abrahamic traditions. I want to talk about that a little bit. So definitely we'll talk about that. And I really am looking forward to see where this conversation goes, and how we can possibly have a better understanding of how we got to the place that we are at. And that is of critical importance. How did we get to where we are? I think this dialogue will answer some of those questions. Let me say really quickly also with reference to what's going on with Sekou. I have not seen the video. But I did notice a few people hit me up and saying this happened. I have been way too busy, but I want to say that I'd really be surprised if anyone could find substantive things to say about our brother Sekou. So, listen, Sekou, you know that I have your back. You know that I'm gonna look at it as soon as I possibly can and have some conversations with folks about it. And you just need to know that he's one of the most erudite minds that comes across these airwaves these days. And for anyone to try to say negative things about this brother, and I have heard some of the negative things that have been said in the past, we should just know that that's ridiculous, and we'll handle it. We'll handle it. The community will handle it, because as soon as people do those sorts of things, they should be called out. Anyway, without further ado, that is that's
all right. Thank you, Brother Jabari. Before we start this thing, I'm gonna pass the mic to Brother Zion Lex. He is the challenger, and I will allow this brother to start the conversation. I just want to be mindful, both of you be mindful. I'm not going to do no clock, so y'all can be mindful of each other's time. That's all. So we don't need a clock. Y'all going to have a conversation. Sure. And y'all be mindful of each other's time. Shout out to my brother JJ. Welcome back home, brother. JJ is back on the planet. He is out of the white man's caves. All right. He is back on the ground, out of the white man's dungeon, and be looking forward to our brother JJ coming through soon.
I must have missed a lot. I don't even know what you're referring to. I missed a lot on that.
Oh yeah, you missed a lot. Rob Rack locked down. He got some crazy stuff. Wow. And JJ was locked down, but he's home. JJ is back in full effect. Shout out to my man. I'm glad he's back home. That's all that matters. Wow. So without any further ado, brother Zion, you got the floor, brother.
All right, peace. All right, so I'll open the dialogue by saying this. One of the things that I've always found interesting about the dialogue of Sumer and Kemet as being the elder civilizations in the world, and specifically centered around which one is the eldest, is how, as Afrocentrists or as Afrocentric scholars, you'll hear many Afrocentric scholars say that we started everything. Black people not only built up empires in Africa, but we went out and we peopled the world and established empires and even civilizations throughout the world, right? I've heard some of the greatest scholars, from John Henry Clark, from Dr. Ben, to Sheikh Antigeo, speak towards and demonstrate in their works, of which, I have a whole season collection of their works, some of them that I'll draw from this evening, where they're saying clearly that Black people established the world's first civilizations, not just in continental Africa, but even outside of Africa. But all of a sudden, when I want to have the conversation about some of those off the continent civilizations that was started by Africans, now it's an issue. So I've always found that curious, because again, I know that some of your favorite speakers and teachers, without saying everybody's name, they're part of the people pushing the narrative that we are among those elder civilizations, not just on the continent, but outside of the continent. So what I would actually like to see, and what really draws me towards this dialogue, is to see more consistency with the ideas that we hold, right? We can't say in one breath that we are the founders of civilization world over, but when it's time to talk about some of these civilizations outside the continent, now we want to say, no, they're white, they're not, and it doesn't add up. And so that's just one point that I want to make. The second point that I want to make is an interesting point, because I've always wondered why it is that people either underestimate me or either downplay the kernels or the nuggets, the main points of this particular argument. And that is when we speak about Afro-centered cultures that exist during the Bronze Age, prior to the Bronze Age, which we're now going into the prehistoric record, right, where we're talking about the early cultures. What's interesting about that conversation is, once again, you'll have Black Afrocentric scholars that say there's no white civilization before the Greeks. But when I start talking about Sumer, 3100 BC and 3300 BC and 3500 BC. All of a sudden now, that's a white civilization. So again, I may not be the most intelligent person, but bet your bottom dollar, I am deeply intelligent. And as such, the thing that makes me deeply intelligent is not so much that I speak, is that I listen. I'm always a person that I listen to what people say so that I can carve out my ideas and know what I want to say. So, having said that, I think that what makes this dialogue so problematic among Black people is the inconsistency with many of the notions that we hold for black greatness and grandeur world over. Right? It's almost as if we pick and choose when we rule, and I don't think that we should do that. I think it's inconsistent. Um, the third thing I want to say, and these are just cheap opening points. The third thing that I want to say is that one of the things that's deeply important to even advocate for either side is to be fully immersed knowledge wise with both cultures and their beginnings, right? So if we're going to argue that Kemet is older than Sumer, I would hold the position that the person arguing that Sumer is older should possess a great knowledge of how Sumer comes into being a civilization, whether it be through linguistics, whether it be through the historical record, whether it even be through DNA, right? Migrational patterns. I would also hold that the person holding that position should also study ancient Egypt. So what I'm saying is, one of the questions that I will ask Brother Jabari this evening is, and that's going to be my question, that's going to be my end statement. When you say that Kemet is an older civilization, the first thing I want Jabari to define for us is what a civilization is. Because if we are in disagreement that Sumer is older, maybe I don't know what a civilization means. And so I would like to hear from Jabari, what is his definition of a civilization? That second question that I want to ask him is, what scholars have he studied in the counter position? Because what most people do when they hold a notion or a view, they study everything that agrees with them. That's a logical fallacy. Jabari is a collegiate professor. I'm sure he instructs his students that when you are framing an argument, you don't just have to know what it is that you hold, you have to also study the counter argument. So my question to Jabari would be, the third question is, whose works are you studying when you say that Kemet is older? And whose works are you studying when you say Sumer is older? And who do you deem to be the authorities in those studies? I'll yield.
Good. Thank you. Let me say that I want to argue that this discussion around Sumer has really reached the fever pitch in the African American community, in the African descended community, and I think that it's curious. I am not one of the people that you will hear argue that Sumer was an Asian or a European nation. You're not going to hear me make that claim. I think that there's been enough study on Sumer now for us to recognize that even those people who once called it something other than African have now changed part of their tune. So now their language was reclassified. For some time, they were saying that the language of ancient Sumer was a Semitic language. People are now saying that it should be reclassified into the Afro-Asiatic languages. There's some that say that it has similarities to languages that are sub-Saharan. I think that's part of it. One of the challenges that I have, and I've had this challenge, I've issued this challenge to Zion at some point as well, is that sometimes what people do is they have a very anachronistic approach to Sumer. When they try to say that Sumer is older or that Sumer is the origin of civilization, what they end up doing is they smash together those civilizations that we might call Sumer. There's an earlier name that I think that we should start using, that we might call Sumer, to those civilizations that we could clearly call Akkadian. Sometimes people will say that we're talking about Chaldea or Babylon, or these names have different time periods and are likely the description of different peoples in the same area. One of the things that people do is they say Sumer is very early. Zion has done this. I've called him on it before. I don't know if he's still going to do it, but I'm going to see if he's going to do it. They'll say that Sumer is very early or earlier than Kemet, and then they'll look for things in Sumer that look similar to the Kemetic narrative, and they say, well, this likely means that Sumer gave this to Kemet. And I think that when people do that, all you have to ask them is their dates. And that becomes a real major challenge. You might remember that I challenged Zion on that issue even in the book that he wrote, which I have a copy of, as you know, Ancient Kemet on Trial. So he's being polite now, but he did put Kemet on trial, right? So we're going to perhaps talk a little bit about some of those issues as well. A major focus of the book is civilization comes from Sumer. Sumer is earlier than Kemet. That's a major focus of his ideas. And I don't know how much of his ideas have changed since, but definitely we will analyze this. Another major comment that I need to make, something that we need to acknowledge, is that very often when people say that Sumer is older, what they are doing is bizarre. What they do is they look at classical Kemet. They look at Kemet as a unified nation occurring somewhere around 3100 and 3200 BCE. And then they look at Proto-Sumer and they say Sumer is older. If you're going to look at Proto-Sumer, you have to look at Proto-Kemet. And that's just how this should be done. When they do that, they're making it sound like those people in the region that we would call Kemet came into existence at 3100 BCE. No one should make that argument. Obviously, we're talking about when Namr unified two different nations. There were nations that existed there already. There were people that were there already. And we also see many of the signs of advanced civilization during this period. It does not make sense for us to try to then call this period in Kemetic history as it's the only time that these people did anything. And so I'm going to challenge folks that do that vehemently as well. They'll even talk to you about when we first see people move into the region of Sumer and say that's Sumer. And then they'll do something even more interesting. They'll go 4,000 years later and say this is Sumer. We need to just simply ask people for their time frame. Finally, I want to say this, and I am going to show this. This is not a slide, it's an image. Zion is not the only one that has a newfound interest. Well, not newfound for him, but he's not the only one in the community that is expressing interest in Sumer these days. Take a look at this. Sonet, if you could put this on the screen. You'll actually see that this is an image that comes from a Christian apologist documentary called Unspoken. And I'm going to say to you, they had some very negative things to say about me in that debate, in this discussion, in this documentary. But I want you to look closely at what they're doing. Do you notice the cuneiform in the background? If we're talking about folks who are the adherents of the biblical narrative, why are we talking about Sumer? There's only one reason, and that's because they are trying to focus on Sumer because there is a section of the biblical narrative that says that Abraham from Ur of the Chaldees. By the way, many scholars now question the validity of that statement. But that's the reason why in the African-centered community, in the Black community, now Christians and others who are Abrahamic followers are focused on Sumer. Why? Because they're trying to say the biblical narrative or part of it is older than Kemet. Call it out, folks. That's what's happening. And so we are going to challenge this. We are going to analyze this, and we're going to bring it into the light so that it can be cleansed by the sun as it shines on it.
Brother Jabari, real quick, did you answer the question of Zion Lex?
No, he asked me what is civilization. We're going to talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brother Zion.
What,
You got the
what I
floor.
really want to do is I want to. That's my opening, right? Not just like a response to him.
Oh, okay.
Actually, we'll talk about what civilization. Sure.
Brother Zion, you got the floor.
All right, thank you. So, as expected, I know that Brother Jabari is going to come strong. I also know that he might want to revisit parts of, an older dialogue that we've had. And that's fine too. I'm all for it. And one of the things that scholarship should always be, it should always be ever developing. Consistency can change, right? Because when you come into new information, as you grow in learning and you tap into new ideas and new evidences, you're supposed to grow. And so I say that to say, when Jabari says that there are people who, when speaking of Sumer, they kind of truncate the dates and the chronology by making things that are not Sumer part of Sumer, so as to stretch Sumer's presence, as it were. And I'm paraphrasing. But I want to say this to Brother Jabari as someone, again, who studies Sumer very deeply. When you've ever heard me posit, and I certainly have posited, that the culture that Abraham is born into is moreover considered historically and academically a Sumerian culture, that's an easy understanding for anyone that studies Sumer. Why should that be easy? We hold, and the scholarly consensus on the period that the Bible characterizes for Abraham is roughly 2000 BC. Having said that, 2000 BC is the third dynasty of Ur. Son, there's like some feedback coming in. Is that your mic or Jabari's?
I'll mute it.
No, that's not me.
Okay.
Brother Jabari, mute your joint.
Okay. So again, this notion that, bringing up Sumer and truncating chronology and how that's inaccurate. Let me say this to you guys. Abraham, as far as the biblical narrative presents his story, the scholarly consensus is that he falls around 2000 BC as the biblical narrative presents his story. Having said that, 2000 BC is what's referred to as the third dynasty of Ur, also known as the Sumerian Renaissance period. That's important. There's a reason why the third dynasty of Ur, 2000 BC, is being described as the Sumerian Renaissance period. What is a Renaissance? We had a Harlem Renaissance several decades ago, a resurgence of Harlem culture. A Renaissance period historically refers to a resurgence of a prior or earlier culture. Abraham lives during the time of what's called the Sumerian Renaissance period. But because a lot of people don't study Sumer, but they hear the date 2000 and they say, but wait, Sumer was done since 2300, so this can't be Sumer. Well, you just need to study more to know that 2000 is the Sumerian Renaissance period. This is a time where the Sumerians / Akkadians kick out the Gutians and bring back Sumerian culture. Here's what's a little more interesting about this point. Are you aware, not to Jabari, because as a scholar, I'm going to hold that he's probably aware, but to the community, are you aware that every king from the Akkadian period on, all the way to Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, every single one of them took on the title King of Sumer and King of Akkad? Why is that? Because of the Sumerian culture that thrives in all of those periods. Now, does that mean that as the Chaldean culture comes in, that there's no differences, no nuances? Absolutely not. But the main or foundational culture, meaning their religious beliefs, their mythologies, are all based in the Sumerian narrative. So every single king from the Akkadian period on said that they are the king of Sumer and Akkad. That's important, because then you wouldn't say that Zion is truncating chronologies when he calls things Sumer after 2300 BC. you'll have the scholarly impetus to put what Zion Lex says into context, because you would know that this period is referred to as the Sumerian Renaissance period. And so I think that's important. The other thing that I want to say is this. There's a book that I have on my shelf. There's a couple of books that I have on my shelf. Two of them that I'm going to draw from. The first, they're by the same author. The first one is The African Origin of Civilization, Sheikh Anta. Shout out to that great elder, because he now has essentially his own exhibit in the Met Museum. I'm actually doing a tour the first Sunday in February to kick off Black History Month, to go into the Sheikh Anta part of the museum, which is adjacent to the Egyptian exhibit, to do a tour on civilization as presented in his works. One of the things that you'll find when you're either reading African Origins of Civilization or Civilization of Barbarism, by Sheikh Anta, is that the dates that are mentioned there are outdated. One of the things that I try my best not to do when it comes to elders that have written works in past is not to do what I see people in the conscious community doing. You know, people who refer to Dr. Ben as pseudo, John Henry Clark as pseudo. Mind you, these are the same people that are supposed to be Team Kemet. But already got videos where they're dissing grand elders because information that's presented by these elders in their time isn't consistent with the scholarship of today. I don't do that. What I do is, our elders did their best with what they had at their disposal. When Sheikh Anta writes African Origins of Civilization and Civilization or Barbarism, he posits that Kemet becomes a united force under Narmer in 4100 BC. Nobody says that today. We're in the year 2023, where we know that is 1,000 years too early. That is absolutely incorrect. It doesn't give us the ability to diss the elder, because at that time in history, that was essentially a scholarly consensus. So what we say about that is our elders did their best with what they had at their disposal. But the scholarly consensus today is that Kemet becomes a united politic under Narmer. And that occurs, as celebrated in the infamous Narmer palette. I'm holding in my hand a replica, 3100 BC, not 4100. So when people say that the Hebrews carry outdated information, but we stand on the back of our scholars, you know, people who try to crystallize information in the Bible, they're going on outdated information, racist Europeans, but put a pause on that for a moment. Because are you studying your own material enough to know that there are several great teachers of past that presented information in books which is currently outdated? And there's a great deal of their scholarship that is based on that. So what do? Discredit them? No, we update the information. And in updated information, that's why we need to revisit this topic. Because when I first had this conversation, everyone said, why is Zion Lex talking about Sumer? That's a bunch of Asiatics, a bunch of white people. We even had some people I certainly don't want to name, because I don't think that it's worth my while to do so, who have debated, that literally said Sumerians are white people. That is so sloppy to say in 2023. I would think in the 21st century it's sloppy to say, but certainly in 2023 it's sloppy to say. And so I say, in moving forward, if we can go back and chart what the ancestors of old wrote in the last 30, 40 years, update their information based on present new information, we can help to grow these dialogues that we're having, that I would like to think we all are having for the benefit of the growth of our people moreover. Having said that, I also want to say this. If you look behind Sarnetta, the title of the debate has been changed. I have the original title of the debate. Sarnetta, allow me to share my screen for a moment. This is going to be interesting. And when everybody could see my screen, there we go. The original title of the debate is a title that I came up with. That's in part how I know it's the original title. I posited to Sarnetta that I wanted to debate either Shaka Amos or Brother Jabari, and if not them, then I guess Chris on the origin of civilization, Sumer or Kemet. Sarnetta thought that that was a good idea, and he, reached out to those people that I named, and Jabari responded. And I really do respect that Jabari responded, because I know Jabari's always up for a challenge. But I want to say this. In that conversation held 2 days ago on Sarnetta TV, Brother Sekou called in. Beautiful brother. And he said, I think this is going to be a good debate. I'm paraphrasing. But if Jabari argues in the direction of Kemet, that's going to be problematic for him. I said, wait, huh? I thought Sumer was younger than Kemet. Why would that be problematic? Then Sekou goes on to say, if it is expanded to the Nile Valley, then that would be a better argument for Jabari to say. Now, because Sekou commented, I want to say this. I'm not too familiar with him, but I want to say this. So let's be clear. I'm mentioning this not because I didn't approve the change, because as I'm going to go on to say, sadly, when me and Jabari finally actually debate this, I think that this was very bad to do. Because in expanding the dialogue to Nile Valley, you're giving me an opportunity to have a conversation I could not have because I was limited to Kemet. But in expanding it to the Nile Valley, you actually push that right in my lap, as it were, to expand the conversation. So I'm enjoying the fact that the title changed, but I just want to make something clear.
Uh-oh!
If we're going to change the title, because that's problematic for Jabari. And by the way, let me say this to everybody, because I'm always transparent. That was not what Brother Jabari's doing. In fact, Brother Jabari came on shortly thereafter, and he said, well, some people act as if when we're talking Kemet that doesn't include Nubia. So for me, it doesn't really matter whether we change it or not. But I want to make something clear. If scholars who are watching can see and understand that in just saying Kemet that's problematic for Jabari, then that means you're already acquiescing in part to the premise that I'm establishing. Because why should it be problematic to simply say Kemet? Why do you have to add the Nile Valley? Again, in Jabari's credit, it wasn't Jabari's idea. I want to close this portion with a quick video. This video is from a brother in the conscious community that a lot of people know. He goes by the name of Shaka Amos. Shaka Amos, a couple of months back, reached out to me through Sarnetta, even called in live to say that he wanted to say something to Zion Lex Live. And I want to share with you guys what Shaka said, and then I'm going to yield my mic to Brother Jabari. Okay. Shaka said that he wanted to give Zion Lex his flowers because when he debated Zion Lex on Sumer versus Kemet, that Zion had far more right than he had wrong, and he even considers Zion Lex a problem on this topic. I want to share this with the community really quick, and then I'll yield my mic.
Peace and Black Power family. What's your name? Where you calling from?
My name is Shaka Amos.
Oh, shit. What's going on, Shaka?
Shout out to my brother Zion Lex. And Zion, by the way, I promise I owe you this on air. That is, do you remember when we had our debate? This is real quick. I got to give Zion his props. Zion, I got to give you your props. When you and I had our debate, there were a lot of things that you had correct that even though I argued against you, I discovered later that you were actually correct, and I wanted to give you your props publicly because you deserve that.
I want to pause on that point to say this. Thank you, Shaka. Shout out to you. Shaka said, I want to give Zion Lex his credit and his flowers openly because in that debate, Zion Lex actually had a lot of things right. But because he had not fully studied the topic, Sumer, and this is what I was intimating to Jabari, that he was led to the position of going against many of the things I said, even knowing to himself he hadn't fully studied it yet. But him, I can respect because at least he can come back and admit that. I'm going to let the remainder play. It's only a minute, and then I'll yield my mic.
That's called
big,
respect.
Shaka. I respect you, brother. That's big.
Didn't I tell you that, though? Didn't I tell you that, Zion?
Thank you. I respect that, Shaka. And I learned a lot in that debate from you about chronology. So shout out, brother. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Absolutely. That's what real scholars do. They show respect.
You got your man. Hey, you know what? That's something big you just did too, man. I appreciate that. I respect that. And when you told me that on the phone about Zion, I called the brother up and I told him, remember that, Zion? Didn't I tell you?
Yeah, you definitely
I told him, I said, yo, Shaka gave you mad love and props, brother.
What a lot of
that was some grown man shit you did, scholarly shit.
I wanted to give it to him publicly so that the people could hear me say it. That was what's important.
Yeah.
You know?
If only all of us could do stuff like that, man. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And Zion, truthfully speaking, the only reason that I was unable to concede the point during the debate is just the very simple fact that I simply didn't know. It's really, and that's what we have to be comfortable with saying. We have to be comfortable with saying, I didn't know.
I'm going to stop that there because I think that spoke volumes. Shaka said the only reason that he had not conceded the debate, admit he lost, is because he simply had not studied the topic and didn't know. Congratulations, you're hearing from Shaka himself that he lost the debate. Because I believe that is what concede means when he says the only reason why I have not conceded the topic. So I want to say to Brother Jabari, I actually think...
Good one, Zion. I love it, man. Good one.
Of course.
Yeah.
I actually think debating this topic with Brother Jabari is different. First, because this is a different beast. And this is a beast that I've come to respect. And I'll yield my mic.
All right.
Let me first start by saying that I'm pleased. Well, let me I guess deal with the elephant in the room. Somehow I don't think that Shaka would agree that he lost. He said he conceded some points to you. But I'm sure that once Shaka hears about this, trust me, he's gonna have something to say.
Well, he might want to step up to the plate now.
But I like how Zion did that. That's good.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. I love it.
Let me first say that I'm glad also that we're at the point where Zion is able to really show you that his true interest in Sumer is a biblical one. And he mentioned how critical Abraham is to this narrative. And I want you to hear that he also said that most scholars argue that Abraham existed at a certain period of time. I'm going to contest him. I believe that most biblical scholars now admit that Abraham is likely not a person that is historical. That Abraham, if he is based on real people, he might be an amalgamation. That if there is any truth to it, certainly we're not seeing it in the story of that we see in the Bible. I want you to take a look. I'm going to show you a source. First off, let me say, Sonetta, if you could share. First off, let me say that this is the section where in the Bible that really posits that Abraham was in Ur, right? This is in Genesis 13:7. It says, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land and possess it. So I want you to hear right off the bat, that's why Zion is on Sumer. In fact, that's why Black Christians are now on Sumer. That's why Hebrew Israelites are talking about Sumer, because they are trying to posit that the biblical narrative in some way is older than ancient Kemet. That's the reason. That's the reason. That's it. If that is the reason, let me please say that we're in trouble. Because we should understand now that Abraham is not a historical character. Here's some reasons. The Babylonians, Babylon was not called Chaldea until much later. So when you say Ur of Chaldea, you are taking two terms for land, for nations, and you're smashing them together. That's what you're doing. That's almost like saying that let's see, who should I put this on? That Biden was born on Turtle Island. There was a point where the native people of this land called the United States Turtle Island, and Joseph Biden was born on that landmass, but certainly when he was born, it was not called Turtle Island. When you smash those things together, you are doing, I would say, historical felony. And that's what they're doing, historical felony. In addition to that, he's depicted with camels. And we should recognize that most historians argue camels were not in the region at the time. There's no outside synchronization whatsoever and no archaeological evidence. So this is an argument that's done in the Bible on earth, but I'm going to get past that. I want to play a long video. Look at what Reconstructing the Society of Ancient Israel by Paula M. McNutt says. She says, until the last several decades, historians of ancient Israel have tended to begin their accounts of Israel's history with the so-called ancestral and patriarchal period, dated variously to the Middle Bronze I or Middle Bronze II period, or the early part of the Late Bronze Age. Underlying these histories is an assumption. I want to say that again. Underlying these histories is an assumption. I'm going to say it a third time. Underlying these histories is an assumption that traditions recorded in the book of Genesis about Abraham and his descendants, those in the remainder of the Pentateuch about Moses and the Exodus from Egypt, and those in Joshua and Judges about the conquest and settlement preserve some historical evidence of a period preceding the birth of Israel as a nation at the end of the early Iron Age. Listen to this next part very closely. But it is now generally recognized that there is nothing specific in the Genesis stories that can be definitively related to known history in or around Canaan in the early second millennia BCE. Abraham is identified as coming from Ur of the Chaldeans, but the Babylonians were not known as the Chaldeans until a much later time. Historians, many biblical historians now, are questioning this issue. These are slides from an earlier discussion. And I want you to know that some of this is I'm still hearing it in what Zion is saying. I want you to look at the bottom of this. Many of the folks that want to talk about the primacy of Sumer actually are smashing together periods. Here are some general periods. Sumer, we should say, existed around 4500 BCE in its proto stage to about 2004 BCE. Now, at 4500 BCE, was it known as Sumer? No. And that's one of the reasons why I did not see that it was going to be a major problem to say Sumer or Kemet, because I think we know what we're talking about, but we will certainly have those discussions. During the time that we're talking about 4100 BCE, do we see the name Sumer? No. The Akkadians come at 2354 to 2154. Then we have the Syrians from 2500 to 610 BCE. And then we see the Babylonians from 1894 to 712. I want you to understand that when we smash these periods together, we have problems. We have problems. And I know that Zion said I might want to look at his old work and take some issue with it. As long as it's still in the public domain, I'm going to take some issue with it, right? It is still in the public domain. I even was thinking today, well, am I being fair to Zion? Maybe he's pulled down the book. Maybe he said there's some things that I can do that are better. I want you to look at, this is Amazon right now. By the way, you'll also see when I purchased the book. Look at this. You purchased the book, Jabari, on June 14th, 2017. So this was 6 years ago. Zion, I didn't even realize it was that long ago until I looked at it today. 6 years ago. But this book is still there and still selling. So if you don't want me to challenge you on it, then you have to do something different with it. I'm not going to speak extensively about your book today. I'm not. But I am going to say that some of what I'm hearing you do right now is similar to what you did in your book. Looking at some things that are from one period and trying to synchronize them with something that is later, that's a problem. That's a problem. I mean, even the word Sumer, we know what you mean, but using the word Sumer has the same problems with using the word Kemet. I didn't think that we were going to be being that semantical here. I did not. And so you are correct. When someone, I didn't even hear the conversation before I came on, by the way. When I got on to Sonetter's channel the other day, Sonetta said, I think we should talk about Nile Valley. And I said, that's fine if we want to talk about Nile Valley. But I think that Zion and I know what we're talking about. So this is not a situation where I think that changing the word from Kemet to Nile Valley gives me a better advantage. I think we know what we're talking about. And so that is what we're going to talk about. When we're talking about the same people, we're talking about the same people. When we're talking about the same people, we're talking about the same people. And that is what we must do. Now, I also want to say that if he is saying that Sumer is earlier than Kemet and implying that Sumer gives more to the world by the title saying Origin of Civilization, we must be saying Sumer gives more to the world than Kemet, then I want him to give us some dates. What dates are you referring to? This is important. When we're referring to the word civilization, he asked me this question earlier. When referring to the word civilization, really, it's really hard for me to give you a hard and fast definition. But I want to be clear that we see civilizations are when they're born and when they sometimes come into prominence. And a lot of times what people do with Kemet is they look at prominent Kemet and they don't look at when Kemet was born. And I think that we should do the same thing. If we're going to look at Sumer and say Sumer is early and it's so influential, then I'd like for you to show me what was influential during that period of time. How do we see the elements of high culture during this period that you're referring to? When I'm referring to civilization, clearly, I think we can say proto-civilization is when we see people settled in an area. We see permanent settlements in the area. We see them cultivating grain or raising domesticated cattle. All of those things that mean that people are settled in an area, not just passing through. So those are part of the things I'm talking about with civilization. But of course, civilization's earmarks, those things that come from Kemet are things like the importance of Kemetic understanding of medicine and science and mathematics and architecture and literature and spirituality. All of these things, I think, are hallmarks of how Kemet gives these major aspects of things to the world. Zion also asked who I'm reading. And I read a lot of different authors. I put this one up for him to see that I actually enjoyed this book very much by Samuel Noah Kramer. History Begins at Sumer. He believes that Sumer is primary. He believes that I got my ring light is shining in a way. Hopefully you can see. He believes that Sumer is primary. I don't agree with him, but I think that he wrote an interesting book, and I learned a lot about Sumer by reading it, right? And so I certainly am reading scholars that don't agree with me, because that's what scholars are supposed to do, right? How can you disagree with an argument when you're not even familiar with it? How about the Hermstein volumes? I believe that I was just told yesterday that there are 3 volumes now. Here goes volume 1, volume 2, right? So please know that these are also authors that I'm reading as well. And even as I read them, I think that they say things that are problematic. They just say things that are problematic. And so I know you got them. I know you got them. I think you should be surprised that I got them, right? so yeah. So I want to have that one too. Where is that one? Now, there are a lot of books in here. Maybe during the break I'll look for it. Sometimes I struggle to find a book that I haven't put my hands on in a moment. So I'll look for that one too. But you should know that these arguments are arguments that I think even the scholars I'm showing you are doing something disingenuous.
All right, let's turn it over, brother.
Wait, I'm going to say it again. Wait, brother. Come on now. You act like I spoke for a long time. You ain't looking at how long he spoke. He spoke.
All right. All right. Go ahead. Continue, brother.
He spoke longer than this. What they do is they look at Proto-Sumer, and then they look at Kemet as a nation after it's already unified. And I think that we have to get to the point where we're no longer doing that. If you're going to look at Proto-Sumer, you got to look at Proto-Kemet. And also, this is the final thing that I'm going to say, and then I'll turn things over. If we believe that Sumer is populated by people of African descent, here's a really big question. Which route did they take to Sumer? Historians now argue we know how they got to Sumer, if they are in fact African. And there are scholars there are non-African centered scholars who argue that they might have been from North Africa, right? It's not just Zion and a few other Black people. Other scholars say, hey, they might have been from North Africa. And I believe that there is a good argument they might have been from North Africa. But if they actually have gone through a particular route, then how can you say that Sumer is older? Because I guarantee you we know where they went. I'll show you the path that scholars say they took. And so I think that will be of great interest too. And I also see a comment, Shimona Bat Levy, saying it feels like Jabari has been speaking for 2 hours. Brother, that's because I've said so much that you need to research, that it will take you more than 2 hours to unpack what I said. Thank you.
Brother Zion, you got the mic.
You're muted, bro.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, I can.
All right. To begin, I just want to correct Brother Jabari on what he immediately just said. That was actually a sister. Her name is Shemuela Bat Israel, daughter of Israel. So that was a sister.
Okay.
But notwithstanding, let me deal with something. I heard something you said initially as a response to me, and I want to address it as a point of reference on my screen. So I'm going to share my screen once more, son. And when everybody can see my screen, I'll jump in. Let me make this nice and big.
All right, we can see it.
All right, here we go. What I heard Jabari do twice is infamously referred to as either a straw man argument or a red herring fallacy. So let me first delineate and define. A straw man argument, sometimes called a straw person argument or spelled straw man argument, is the logical fallacy of distorting an opposing position into an extreme version of itself and then arguing against that extreme version. I'm going to say it again. The logical fallacy of distorting and opposing position into an extreme version of itself and then arguing against that extreme version. What are we talking about? Brother Jabari, I didn't even say what you just said, which is why I was sitting here writing notes so I could respond to you, immediately. You said that I don't know why Zion mentioned Abraham because there's a number of problems there. Abraham, scholars are now saying he's not even historical. Jabari, one thing I said, and I'm hoping that as a scholar you do this as well. You listen. One thing I said earlier is that one thing that makes me sharp is that I'm a great listener. I listen to what people actually have to say. So I'm hoping that you give me that same credit. Because when you go back and you play this video, and mind you, people in the comment section, when this video goes up, they're going to hit the time marker and say Zion was right and Jabari was wrong. So here is what I said. I said, when scholars look at the biblical narrative that presents the story of Abraham, they say that his narrative is consistent with that historical period. I never said that Abraham was historical. That's a matter of my personal belief. We're having a scholarly debate. I'm not injecting my personal belief into a scholarly debate, which is why I'm very careful with my words. I said there's a biblical scholarly consensus that the Bible's narrative, as it presents the story and narrative of Abraham, is consistent with that period of 2000 BC. This is why listening is important. But Jabari chose to argue against something I didn't even mention, which is Abraham being historical, and then argue that. Again, scholars refer to that as a straw man fallacy or a straw man argument, which is taking the opposing end of an opponent's argument and essentially arguing for something the opponent never even said. I want to share my screen once more because the second thing that Brother Jabari did is call a red herring. Here we go. And when everybody can see my screen, I'll go in.
We see it. We see it.
Okay. A red herring is a logical fallacy in which irrelevant information is presented alongside. Sonetta, could you take that down so people could actually see? Thank you. Thank you. I know you got to make money, brother, but I want to make sure people could see my delivery as well. A red herring is a logical fallacy in which irrelevant information is presented alongside relevant information, distracting attention from that relevant information. So for instance, let me give you an example from a prior sit down that myself and Brother Jabari had. Myself and Brother Jabari had a sit down a couple of years ago, and we're arguing about the culture of Ma'at and whether or not the 10 Commandments were a plagiarization of the 42 laws of Ma'at. And Jabari pulls out my book, the book that you guys just saw him hold. And he says, well, I took issue with your book, Zion, because, you have a table in your book, which I saw on a website, and you did not give that author credit. Brother Jabari, we're arguing whether or not the 10 Commandments are stolen from Ma'at. What you're doing is called red herring argument. That's what you're doing. You're presenting a red herring argument, which is to simply say you are bringing up irrelevant information alongside relevant information to distract people, and you're actually doing it again. So I find it interesting that you would actually say that you're not sure if Zion has a new dialogue because he seems to repeat something. Well, you're repeating the same logical fallacies, my good brother. And I mean that with all due respect. Because mentioning my book at this junction is not even relative to what we're talking about significantly in the rebuttal. I didn't mention that specifically, but you wanted to go into the book to revisit that conversation to take away from the current conversation. Brother Jabari, I know you know that there are people who are intelligent that can see what you're doing. And I'm hoping you don't think that our community, which includes your community, is ignorant that they can't understand that. And I hold you to a higher standard. You don't have to do that. You're Brother Jabari. You're what they call, emphasis on what they call, because you did lose some debates. You're what they call the conscious community's Mayweather, right? So we expect better from you. The next thing that I want to say is to simply say I open my challenge to Brother Jabari by asking him in closing to define civilization. Notice, guys, there's no definition present yet, except for him to say, he doesn't want to, give, and I'm paraphrasing, he doesn't want to microwave the definition. Well, most people trust Oxford Dictionary. There are scholarly dictionaries. As you can go into slides online, you can also pull up a dictionary and show people what civilization is. Why is it that you don't want to define civilization? Is it that perhaps once you define civilization, I can then ask you how Kemet fits into that scenario? Because that is one of my questions that I'm now asking you. I'm asking you once again, with all due respect, can you define what civilization is? And then tell us how Kemet fits into that description. The second thing I want to say to you is, you pulled up a previous slide where you're saying, and I'm starting to realize why you don't want to have a debate today, because you keep going into old stuff. Perhaps you are not ready to deal with me on the current topic because you haven't presented anything new whatsoever. Meanwhile, I would like to have a full-scale debate on the topic tonight, but I'm waiting on you, who is the Mayweather, to find your, I don't know what to call it, but we're waiting on you. So you mentioned that mentioning Sumer, and you talked about 4100 BC, and you said, we know that there's no Sumer there. And I said, and I'm saying to you right now, mentioning Sumer, 4100 BC, why does Zion do that? There's no Sumer. Jabari, you said that we can argue that Kemet is an older civilization. You say that you don't hold to the view that Sumer is older, but Kemet is. Brother Jabari, I'm hoping that you know that your community now knows that the term Kemet is not even here until the 10th and 11th dynasty in Egypt. And that's certainly nowhere shy of civilization. And it's even further removed historically from where Sumer is in terms of a word that's coined. So why would you do that? It only makes you look bad to people who are smart. But I'm guessing, and I think that this is a thing with a lot of people in the community, a lot of people are hoping that people's ignorance will block them from seeing truth. And I think that that's bad, because one of the things that I said to you in our in-person debate, I said one of the things about deception is that in order to really and truly deceive somebody, there has to be some semblance of ignorance that you can pull over the person, that you can have over that person. There's no deception if there's no blatant ignorance that one can work from. So I think that you're harping on people being ignorant, but I would like to think that the conscious community is a growing and ever developing community. And I'd like to think that with all the scholars that we see come here, that there has been enough information now, certainly through some of the more recent debates, to show why some of the information that yourself and others are holding are outdated. By the way, speaking of outdated, I want everyone to notice that when I mentioned that Sheikh Antigeo posits 4100 BC for the origin of Narmer and Kemet as a civilization, notice Jabari stayed far from that. Literally, don't want to touch it. Similar to how he doesn't want to define civilization. I find that interesting. I'll yield.
Brother Jabari, you got the floor.
Respectfully, I think that sometimes folks can say a lot and say very little. He said that I had lots of, let's start with the red herring fallacy, right? He says that I used a red herring by bringing up something old that didn't relate to the topic. And in order to explain how I used a red herring, he said, in a previous conversation, Jabari said this. Are you trying to accuse me of using a red herring by using a red herring? What was that? I want you to listen to what he said. That's what he just did. That was maybe slick to some, but not slick to, I mean, what? That is what you did. I think that Zion is still a little uncomfortable with me mentioning his book. But brother, when scholars critique each other, they usually critique their written work. And so I haven't said much about your book. I could say more. I haven't said that much about your book, but one of the reasons why I am mentioning your book is because I haven't heard you say anything new tonight. You said nothing new. The stuff that you've argued, by the way, these are just general ideas. You haven't given us a date for Sumer. You haven't told us why you say civilization comes from Sumer. And then you try to make it sound like it's my task to give you a definition for civilization. If you want a definition for civilization, and then you say that I could use Webster's dictionary, I think you can as well, dear brother. Why don't you do that? I've already explained to you what I would consider civilization. I don't know if you weren't listening, but that is what I said. I said there's some people would look at proto-civilization. That's when people are in a stationary period where they have a permanent location, where we see domestication of animals, where we see the utilization of cultivated foods and grains. I said, it's like maybe you didn't hear me, but that was me explaining some of the hallmarks of civilization. And then I said there are those things that make up modern civilization that clearly have come to modern civilization from Kemet. I answered the question. If you wanted me to answer the question with a definition from a dictionary, you could have done that. You asked me, in fact, what was my definition of civilization? And I attempted to give you that answer. If you don't like it, you can go ahead and show us the definition that you see, and then tell me why Kemet does not fit into that. Then you said that I actually created a straw man argument because you said most scholars say that the narrative of Abraham fits well into the period of 2000 BCE. Did you see the quote that I showed? My quote says, no, they do not. Maybe you didn't read what I put on the screen. You are making an assertion about what scholars believe, and I haven't seen you prove that scholars believe that. I showed you a quote that not only said that many scholars argue that Abraham is not a historical character, but one of the reasons why they say he's not a historical character is because there's no synchronization. And then you say scholars say there's synchronization. One of us has quotes, the other does not. So you need to show us something that argues that scholars believe that. Okay? Maybe you can find something, but that's where we'll have a dialogue. You can't just say that I didn't do it when I did it and put it on the screen. How does that make sense? That doesn't make sense, brother. It doesn't. You also said that I said there is no Sumer at 4100 BCE. That's not what I said. What I was referring to is the name Sumer. The name Sumer.
That's what I said.
And that's the reason why I said, I want you to be clear. Maybe you misunderstood what I was saying, because I gave you the same example as to why I did not feel that saying Nile Valley versus Kemet was of importance, because I think we know what we're talking about. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, at the date that you're talking about, they don't use the name Sumer. That's not what I'm talking. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, because you should recognize that Sumer is mostly a later term. Those people that lived there that you're referring to, they had a completely different name for their civilization. A completely different name. So I would love for you to acknowledge that what you said I said, maybe you misunderstood what I said. I'll give you that, because I don't think that you would intentionally misrepresent it. But what I'm saying is that the names at those times don't really fit, but we know what we're talking about. If we're talking about the same people, they may have different names for their nation. That's fine. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. But if we're talking about different people, you can't say that the Sumerians are the same as the Akkadians. By the way, they even have a different script, different language. And then you're going to compare them to the Babylonians, to the Syrians. No, those are different people. So that is that's the challenge that that we're having here. I think that in some of what I've said, if anyone is misrepresented, I think it is you, brother. You asked me what civilization was, I answered what civilization was. You asked me who I was reading, I showed you who I was reading. If you'd like for me to pull up a definition, I think, why don't you just do it? I'm not obligated to answer all of your questions in that manner. You haven't answered any of my questions. Okay, here's another that you might not answer. You're saying you didn't say Abraham was a historical character, that you're simply saying that historians say that the story of Abraham fits well into the period. I have showed you a quote that says it does not. But let's ask you plainly. He's shaking his head. How about I show you the quote again? Let me show you the quote again, because maybe he didn't see the quote. That's possible. It's possible that he didn't see the quote, and so because he didn't see the quote, he's not seeing that is exactly what the quote says. Here it is. And I could show you others. This is by Paula and McNutt. Is it flashing like that on your screen too, Son Editor? Are you seeing it clearly?
Yeah, it's flashing.
I don't know.
Go back off and come back.
Yeah, I don't know why it'd be flashing. Let me try to show it again.
That happened before with somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know why. That seems clear. Could you please show that? This is the quote by Paula M. McNutt in the book Reconstructing the Society of Ancient Israel. Until the last several decades, historians of ancient Israel have tended to begin their accounts of Israel's history with the so-called ancestral or patriarchal period, dated variously to Middle Bronze I and Middle Bronze II, or the early part of the Late Bronze Age. Underlying these histories is an assumption that the traditions recorded in the book of Genesis about Abraham and his descendants, those in the remainder of the Pentateuch about Moses and the Exodus from Egypt, and those in Joshua and Judges about the conquest of settlement, preserve some historical evidence of a period preceding the birth of Israel as a nation at the end of the early Iron Age. But it is now generally recognized. This is a scholar, a biblical scholar, saying that is generally recognized. The opposite of what you just asserted, Zion. It is now generally recognized that there is nothing specific in the Genesis stories that can be definitively related to known history in and around Canaan in the early second millennia BCE. That is the opposite of what you are saying. If they are saying that there is nothing in the narrative that can specifically fit within that time period, you can't then say scholars say that it fits well within the time period unless you show us something that say the scholars said that. I'm saying this is, brother, you got to show me something. I'm showing you something. Show me something that fits your narrative. And then she also continues and says, Abraham is identified as coming from Ur of the Chaldeans, but the Babylonians were not known as the Chaldeans until a much later time. She's saying this is an anachronism. It doesn't fit with the time period. That is the opposite of what you said, brother. I put a quote on the screen. So yes, they're also arguing that Abraham is not likely a historical character, but they're saying he's not likely a historical character because the story doesn't fit into the time frame. That's what the quote says. So I want you to recognize that what you have said doesn't work. It doesn't work unless you prove it, brother. We can't just take your word for it. This is HOK. We don't do that. Show us why you have come to that conclusion. That's what we want you to do. That's what we want you to do. Show us why you came to that conclusion so that we can rock with you. If you don't show us why you came to that conclusion, virtually everyone on HOK will say that you did not meet your task. That's how it works. And I know you know it because you are an HOK veteran. You really are a veteran. But instead what you did is you said a lot and then said very little. And then you said, I didn't say what I said. You said, I didn't answer civilization when I did. You said that my scholar says something that the scholar does not. What are you doing? Brother, I just want you to understand that with regard to the argument you're making, this is one that needs some support. we're not going to just believe you because you say it so. If that was the case, this would be a very easy debate for either of us to win just because we would look more convincing. That's not what this audience is expecting us to do. They're expecting us to say, how did you come to that conclusion? And I honestly have to say to you that I haven't seen you do that. Now, maybe you're not doing that because you're trying to hold some of the ammunition in the gun because you try to come at me later. If that's what you're doing, okay. But you have to understand, you got to convince people that you're going to be able to contend with me now. This is the weigh-in. If you get knocked out by yourself at the weigh-in, you're going to see you in the fight.
Yeah.
So please show us some sources that argue what you are saying, because I have to say to you, brother, that you haven't done that yet. You haven't done that yet. I'm showing you a source from a scholar. Please, at least try to match my source with the scholar. At least. Anyway, I think that I'm simply going to end here and say that I really hope that you're going to actually listen to what I said and not accuse me of something else, right? Because I didn't do what you said I did. I didn't create a red herring. You created the red herring. And then my source is not a straw man. They actually attack exactly what you said. So I hope that you're able to address this in a way that makes sense for the people. Thank you.
All right. Before we come back to brother Zion, we're gonna give y'all a quick 2-minute break. Y'all go ahead, make y'all runs, go to the bathroom, do what y'all gotta do, go get you something. But I'm gonna say this, man. Please, y'all already see. I say Zion is coming with that smoke. Brother Jabari is trying to put that fire out. So this is going to be fire. This is going to be fire. Wherever there's smoke, there's fire. Y'all already know. So this is going to be one of the best debates ever. We already know Zion is not running from nothing.
No, he isn't.
And Brother Jabari is not running from nothing. So the people love y'all too in this up and coming debate. Whatever y'all do out there, please, man, this is free. Like the video, thumb up the video. All right, so I want to play a quick commercial. I got to pay the bills. Let me play a quick commercial while y'all go get y'all.
Can I just agree with you? He not running nowhere. If anything, he gonna come back with some other stuff, and we gonna have an interesting. I've seen this from him, so I'm excited for it.
All right, play a quick commercial from my brother, your brother, my homeboy. You already know it's the captain in the building. Captain in the building.
Hey, what's going on, man? It's Captain Tazaria back again with another video. Of course, as always, I got another sale. 20% off for all TLC products. If you go to www.tlc1214.com, you can check out our new oils and butters, colognes, sprays, body wash, lotions, hair butter, beard oil. You know I keep that beard oil. You keep the beard looking shining, looking good. Also got the picks. You want to put the pick up in your head, got the pick right here, nice wooden pick, go right in your beard, keep you nice and looking fly. I got some new scents for the ladies as well. This one is called Finish Him. Also got Taste Like Candy, Divine, and Sophisticated. For the brothers, I got Finish Her. And I did the Finish Her, Finish Him for the brother or sister that might need a little extra push, finish the job. This will knock it right on out. Also got Suave for men, and I got Classic Man for men. So make sure you check out the products. I use the glass. I switched back to the glass jars once again. So instead of the plastic jars, you get the plastic. Instead of the plastic jars, you get the glass ones. So a nice, smooth, creamy feel when you put it on. Just to show you how it looks in the jar. Looks just like that. Let me see if it is zoom in. Looks just like that. Nice, smooth, and creamy. And you can always check out the reviews. If you check out my reviews, I'm the 5-star king. I'm 4.9 on Etsy for 5 stars. You can only get 5.0. So I'm right there, right at the niche of straight 5.0. I appreciate all the love and support. That's why I do the sales once a month. So right now, if you check me out, 20% off. Shalom.
All right. Now that I threw this commercial up, y'all can make him give you 20% off because this was an older commercial. So he might not have that 20% off, but God damn it, y'all got him now. Y'all should get him now. You know, this is an older one, man. But all right, so we back with my brother Zion in the building. Zion, you got the floor, brother. Unmute yourself.
All right. You took everybody off the screen, Sana?
Okay,
Yeah,
we all back. We all back.
Good. All right, there we go. All right, what I want to say first and foremost is I'm a little disappointed in Jabari. I actually just expected that Jabari was ready to have a really lengthy dialogue on the topic. Instead, Jabari wants to talk about whether or not Abraham is historical when the conversation is the origin of civilization, Sumer or Nile Valley. Jabari wants to talk about Zion Lex's past book when the conversation is the origin of civilization, Sumer or Nile Valley. Jabari says that he defines civilization, even though even his viewers knows he never gave a definition for civilization. So now the impression is, well, Zion Lex, just show us your information. And here is what's interesting about that. I have a PowerPoint presentation prepared for a full-scale debate. And Jabari would love for me to show my hand so that he can now go back and be able to debate that. But you see, that's not real scholarship. Scholarship is having the know-all to do what you need to do right now, not go back and prepare. I really hate to say this, but it sounds like your scholarship is taking a page from Brother Garfield. Because I only know him to want to see your slides, don't debate, and then come back and study. Jabari, man, with all due respect, and this is a dope dialogue because nobody's trying to insult each other. You know, as debaters, we throw jabs, but it's nothing personal. So, again, nothing personal. But again, I expect more from Jabari. I'm ready to have a full-scale debate right now to answer every single one of Jabari's questions. But Jabari hasn't answered my questions yet. And my questions aren't even going into the actual debate yet, but they're simple questions. My question to Jabari was simply to ask him, when Sheikh Anti-Geop said that Narmer's palette shows and proves that Kemet was a civilization in 4100 BC, I asked him, is that true? Is that outdated? No response from Jabari because he knows that's outdated, so he doesn't want to respond. Second thing I asked him, what is the definition of civilization? So allow me to share my screen. Let's see if we can do it this way. Sonetta, let me know when you can see my screen.
Your screen is up, brother.
All right, good. So let's do this really quick. Civilization is a complex society with 5 characteristics: advanced cities, specialized workers, complex institutions, record keeping, and advanced technology. We can add some things to that because scholars usually speak of 7 key ingredients or markers for civilization. One of them being sophisticated systems of irrigation, right? Looking for a sedentary society, a society where people are settling, coming out of the hunter-gathering period, right? Because the Bronze Age, which ushers in civilization, leaves behind the hunter-gathering period as we come into the sedentary period, the period more so marked with complex systems of agriculture and the domestication of animals. When I asked Jabari this question, let me now unshare my screen. When I asked Jabari this question, what makes Kemet a civilization in 3100 BCE? Based on what we know to be civilization, can you please tell us? The reason why I wanted Jabari to first define for us, because one thing I don't like doing is wasting time. If Jabari disagrees with what I present, of 4100 BCE is the unification of Kemet under the Narmer palette. Is that accurate? Second question is, what is the definition of civilization? If you don't agree with mine, we can now say. Third question is, does Kemet fit into that description? And can you please tell us why?
Brother Jabari, you got the floor. Please answer the questions.
I want you to hear that he's asking me to answer a question, and it's a ridiculous question. It has whether Sheikh Anta Diop says that Kemet was unified at 4100 BCE or 3100 BCE. That my argument is not based on Sheikh Anta Diop. It's not based on Sheikh Anta Diop. Why am I arguing whether he was right or wrong? And the other thing is, and if he was wrong, how does that support his argument? How does that support his argument? I'm going to tell you that Sheikh Anta Diop must get a lot of things wrong, tons of things wrong, because this is what he says. Please share this, Sonnetter. This is in that same book, African Origins of Civilization. He gets so much wrong. This is on page 42. He looks at this statue of someone from ancient Mesopotamia, and he says, this is a Negroid of Mesopotamia. Hatesi, king of Lagash, generally more known as Gudea in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So, he gets so much wrong, Zion. Maybe he's wrong about the people of ancient Sumer being people of African descent as well. What's the point here? I didn't build an argument on Sheikh Anta Diop for you to say, is Sheikh Anta Diop right or wrong? Whether I say he's right or wrong or not is immaterial. And let me say one more thing. You assert that he says it's 4100. Can you show us where he says it's 4100? You haven't even met the basic standard for me to even respond. So I don't even understand why this is an issue. I don't get why he's saying it's an issue. It's kind of ridiculous. And so I guess Sheikh Anta Diop is wrong, Zion, because he believes that the people of Sumer were people of African descent as well. This is crazy. This is crazy. And so you can read it on your term. You can read on your time, so that you're able to show us that. I don't whether he's right or wrong, or whether wrong date or not. Brother, you got to mute.
You got to mute up, Zion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was on. My apologies.
Yeah, I figured I figured you thought you were. That's why I said you got to mute. Okay. So let me say, so you've said that you need for me to answer that question about Sheikh Anta Diop, but just to reassess, that has nothing to do with my argument. That entire book could be wrong, and it still would not make Sumer older than Kemet. It still would not make Sumer older than Kemet. So I think that is important. By the way, there's a really critical question that you have still not answered. I asked you, well, you said that the historical narrative of Abraham fits well into 2000 BCE. That's what you said. You can't hear me? You can't hear me? You can't hear me? Okay.
Zion, you can hear?
I think he says he can hear now.
No, I could hear you. I was just trying to figure out why you keep talking about Abraham and not addressing my questions.
I just said what you said.
All right, come on. You got to get back to it.
I just said what he said about Abraham. You said that the period that Abraham, listen, the reason why he doesn't want us to deal with Abraham family, let me give you a secret just between us. The reason why Zion and other Hebrews, and in fact, Christian apologists who are Black, just Black Christian apologists, by the way, want to focus on Abraham, you have to understand what they're doing. They are trying to say the biblical narrative predates Kemet. That's what they're doing. He doesn't want me to shine light on what he's doing. So please, what are you saying? By the way, he said that it was just the narrative of Abraham, but I asked him very clearly, okay, Zion, do you believe that Abraham is historical or not? Do you believe Abraham is mythological or historical? I don't want to misrepresent your position. So if you believe, as I believe, that Abraham is a mythological figure, a legendary figure, then go ahead and tell us. But very clearly, he wanted to say I was saying one thing that I didn't say, and he never answered the question. Because that's what he's trying to do. And we see you, Zion. It's the same thing that the folks from Unspoken did. They are trying to say the Bible predates Kemet, which is a really bizarre argument because they also are not arguing that the people of Sumer are people who are Hebrews. So these are not kith and kin of the people in your book. Why does it even matter? So this is what we're trying to do here. So let me do something else. I'm going to actually give you a little bit more. Because Zion says he came prepared for a debate. Right now, I'm going to tell you that what he's saying sounds like the Blimpie argument that I described earlier, right? The I'll gladly give you a hamburger for a I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. If you're so prepared, show us some sources. You haven't shown us any sources. I'd like to see some sources. And so go ahead and do that so that we're able to truly understand the argument that you're making. One of the things that I continue to do for these folks who try to say that that this is not relevant. Hold on, let me put up my slide here.
Really quick, Sarnetta, I just tried to call you.
Okay. Sonetta, did you hear he's trying to reach you? Okay. My PowerPoint just crashed. Give me 1 second, Sonetta. PowerPoint crash is coming up now. And Ikman Organis, I answered all his questions. Stop saying are you going to answer his questions or not? Obviously, just as reading is fundamental, listening is fundamental as well. But I'm not going to answer questions that don't respond to the debate. Sheikanta Dial's book can be completely wrong, and it still would not address the issue of this debate, of this discussion. Let's be clear. It still would not address it. So why should I answer that question? You have to tell me why it's relevant. I'm not here. You're not going to just be able to puppet me. If this is a question that is relevant, then we'll go ahead and answer it. That's what we have to do.
All right.
Why you say all right?
I'm gonna have to put a clock up because I don't want too long-winded, brothers. I don't want y'all to go too long.
All right.
So,
as long as you tell me how much time we have,
yes.
I don't have a problem doing that.
All right, you got another minute.
I don't have a problem doing that.
You got a minute.
I want to say very clearly that when we talk about a minute is a little, how do you tell me I just have a minute right at this moment? 60 seconds, brother. You got to do better than that. You got to at least say 2 minutes. You can't say I'm gonna put a clock up. You got a minute. What is that?
You got a minute, brother, on this one.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. We'll deal with this part later. Just keep in mind that you are the one that's stopping my flow now. It's not Zion.
I know. I'm gonna start your minute now.
And I want to say two things. First of all, I'm gonna just show a simple source. I'm not gonna even show you a heavy source yet. But I want you to look at this is Live Science. Not necessarily a scholarly site, but a site that at least tries to get the details right, right? Did the first civilization arise in Mesopotamia or where? I want you to look really clearly here that they are saying that around 4000 BCE is the earliest phase of Sumerian culture. That's what they're saying, 4000 BCE. I'm giving you a date. I asked Zion for a date. He didn't give us a date, right? But at the same token, what I want you to recognize is we see that groups begin to populate Kemet around 10,000 BCE. This is from Wendorf, Fred, Schlind, and Romuald. And we also see high culture at least I'm being conservative, at least 7,000 BCE. So now one of us has given some dates. Let's see where yours
are. All right. Brother Zion, you got 5 minutes. The time is 18. We at 18. Go ahead, brother. You got 5 minutes. All you got to do is look at your computer and you see your time right up there on your computer. You got 5 minutes. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay,
He's 19 now. You
there
got
was
5 minutes.
there was so much that he said. He went much longer than 5 minutes. But
Right, but now that I'm putting up the clock, everybody get 5 minutes apiece. No, hold on. Time out.
Brother Jabari, don't get so worked up, brother. I'm just making a point. It's nothing personal.
Everybody time out. Just relax. Remember, you started off the conversation, Zion. So now that you're back to the start again, so I'm saying everybody get 5 minutes from here on in. And right now the time is at, I'm gonna say it's 19, but I'm gonna say it's 11:20. So go ahead, brother. You got 5 minutes. It's 11:20.
All right, let me share my screen.
All right.
Again, it's sad that I have to say this because, again, I really do think that Brother Jabari is a scholar when he wants to be. I'm not sure if he wants to be one today. What's sad is that Brother Jabari should have never made the mistake to say that Zion Lex is saying that Sheikh Anti-Gia posits 4100 BC for the unification of the kingdom under Narmer. That's nowhere where he needs to show that. Well, first and foremost, you have the book. Why be misleading? You have the book. You know he said that. So let me share my screen. I'm on page 100. And let me let that move so everybody can see. I'm on page 100. I'll do that again. Of African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality, Sheikh Anti-Gia. Let's do some reading. He starts off in chapter 5. Could Egyptian civilization be of Asian origin? He says, here, as in all that has preceded, it is important to distinguish between what can be deduced from a strict examination of historical documents and what is claimed over and beyond those documents, contrary to their testimony. To assign Egyptian civilization an Asiatic or any foreign origin whatsoever, we must be able to demonstrate the prior existence of a cradle of civilization outside of Egypt. However, we cannot overemphasize the fact that the basic indispensable condition has never been met. So as I'm prepared to show in my PowerPoint, he's also wrong with this. There are several civilizations outside of Egypt by this time in history. Next point. It says, nowhere else, he says, nowhere else had natural conditions favor the development of a human society to the same extent as in Egypt. Nowhere else do we find a chalcolithic industry comparable in its technical perfection. Moreover, apart from some stations of uncertain age in Palestine, notice he mentions apart from uncertain age in Palestine, there's no trace of man earlier than 4000 BC that exists in Syria or Mesopotamia. So that means his point concedes that Palestine certainly has a population that precedes that date, something I was going to severely go into, but I'm handicapped because I'm dealing with someone who says that they're not prepared to have a debate, but they're debating me on things that are past, but unwilling to debate me on things that are present, which I find interesting. Then he says, by that date, the Egyptians had their feet on the threshold of their history proper. It is then reasonable to attribute this precious development of Egypt's first inhabitants to their own genius and to the exceptional conditions in the Nile Valley. Nothing proves that it was due to the incursion of more civilized strangers. The very existence of such, or at least their civilization, remains to be proved. By and large, these observations by Moret are still irrefutable today. Listen to this. The author alludes to the date 4241 BC. 4236, after a slight correction of the first calculations, when the calendar was definitely in use in Egypt. He's using the number 4100 BC for when Egypt becomes a civilization. That is what's problematic. That's the point that I made. Let me go on to the next point. Jabari just said, let me unshare my screen. Jabari just said that he can take the date of 10,000 BC to show where Egypt is a civilization. I really want to know if I'm looking at Brother Jabari or whether or not this is the first clone in the conscious community. Because why would you say that? You know, I'm sure you know that there's no Egypt in 10,000 BC under any name. In fact, there are no settlements of Egyptians in 10,000 BC. That's why the esteemed scholar that you sometimes and often say is your master teacher, one of them, Dr. Ben, he says Egypt cannot be placed before the Sibyllian period, which is 10,000 BC. But here is Jabari saying that he can place them in 10,000 BC. This is interesting. Let me play Dr. Ben in case Jabari caught amnesia.
Night, a little in an area that you have never heard me on, I know. It is the Nubian origin of Egypt. Most people speak about Egypt as if Egypt was the first civilization or society in Egypt and in Africa. And that couldn't be more false than saying that a rabbit is a pigeon. Egypt is one of the last of the ancient cultures, if not the last along the Nile. What made Egypt so important is not that it led any African society in antiquity, but that it is the society where most of the artifacts have remained, because it was the first of the African society and the societies of the entire world to, thank you, to place their recordings in stone. That's the uniqueness of Egypt in difference to other African societies along the Nile. We cannot place Egypt before the civilian period.
And I'll stop there. Dr. Ben ends that discussion, as it were, by saying Egypt is one of the last of the civilizations along the Nile. And to say that Egypt is the first is to say that a rabbit is a pigeon. Lastly, he said, Egypt cannot be placed before the Sibyllian period, 10,000 BC. But Jabari somehow thinks that he can present that. So,
all right. All right, Zion, I gave you 7 minutes in that right there. I think I'm gonna have to give y'all 10 minutes after Jabari do his 6
brother.
minutes.
That was 8 minutes. That's not 7 minutes.
No, that was 7, Jabari.
But you know what? You said 18 is when it started. It is.
Well, hold on, Jabari, hold on. Yo, family, when I open up the floor for questions and answers, that is just exactly what it's for. It's not for you to come in here trying to teach. We got the teachers here already. So don't come in trying to teach. That go for everybody. Ask a question. That's all you coming in for, is to ask a question. Brother Jabari, it is 11:27. You got 7 minutes.
Okay. Now
yeah,
listen.
I will say it's 11:28, like I did Zion.
Okay.
Go ahead, brother.
Can I say this to you? You have to understand that I'm not just someone who reads extensively. I'm not just someone who should be considered a scholar, but I'm also a debater. And I thought that Zion's question to me about Sheikh Anta Diop was a ridiculous one. And remember, I said I would not answer it because he hasn't even shown it to us. Remember that? I hope you recognize that this is strategy. Zion read to page 101. How about I read to you page 102? I've read this book at least 5 times. I knew what you were referring to. I wanted to see you prove it. Can you please show page 102? You can see this is page 102, African origin of civilization. Let's zoom in a little bit. According to the short chronology, 3,200 years before Christ, Egypt was unified into a kingdom under Menes. Sheikh Anta Diop is using the date 3,200, which is still used today. How dare you say that he was 1,000 years wrong? He was saying,
according to the short chronology.
You need to be muted, brother. So I want you to recognize that you are wrong. He's telling you that he's using 3,200 BCE. So I wanted you to do that. Now listen, you should have just listened to me. I said it's irrelevant to the conversation. It really is. All it does now is make it look like you didn't read the book. I did. I did. This book is part of the book in my class on ancient Kemet. We read it from cover to cover. There's some people who have taken the class here. So how could you say that? And you stopped at page 101. And by the way, this source does not validate Christ. The word BC is supposed to be before Christ. That's why he used it. Stop it. Stop it. So let's go ahead a little bit further. I want to do one more thing before I yield the floor. I'm going to show you some dates. You see, I was trying to get Zion to give us dates, right? Because Zion thinks he's slick. He's going to pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. You need to come and show and prove, brother. You're the one that wanted the debate. You even said to Sonetter, I'm the one that came up with the title of the debate. Well, if you did all of that, you're the one that's supposed to be showing something that I'm responding to. You even went first. So here goes from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Obviously an institution that is respected, the largest museum in the United States. By the way, you even showed some sources from the Met, so I'm assuming you would agree with me that most of what they say is something that we should consider reputable. If you dispute them, you got to come with some sources. But look at what they're saying about Egypt, 8,000 to 2,000 BCE. Now, I already showed you a source that said that they believe that Sumer was being populated at 4,000 BC. This is going back to 8,000 BC. And I want to go further because he says, well, at this time, we can't say Kemet is anything because there are no settlements. Let's go into what this hyperlink that explains Paleolithic cultures. Paleolithic cultures. Let's go in. This is a site called Wadi Kubenaya. And look at the dates they're giving it. These are ridiculous dates, Zion. I know you've never seen it. 17,000 to 15,000 BC. In Egypt, the earliest evidence of humans can be recognized only from tools found scattered over ancient surface, sometimes with hearths. By the way, a hearth is when you're establishing a settlement. You know what a hearth is, right? It's like a fireplace, not a campfire, a hearth. Hearths nearby. In Wadi Kubenaya, a dried stream bed cutting through the western desert to the footplain northwest of Aswan in Upper Egypt. We're not talking about Nubia. In Upper Egypt, some interesting sites of the kind described above have been recorded. A cluster of late Paleolithic camps. A camp is a settlement. A camp is a settlement. You said there were no settlements at 3100 BCE. I'm showing you that there are settlements at 17,000 BCE. 17,000 BCE. Oh my goodness. Let me continue. I'm just was located in two different topographical zones on the tops of dunes and on the floor of the wadi. Wadi means stream bed, by the way, a dried riverbed in the Arabic language where it enters the valley. Although no signs of houses were found, diverse and sophisticated stone implements for hunting, fishing, collecting, and processing plants were discovered around hearths. These are sites, 17,000 BCE. And I want you to recognize that this site even is just going, they're just saying 8,000. I didn't even know, I'm showing off now. I'm showing off now. I could have just gone with 8,000 and you would have been out the water. Well, I didn't put you out the water. I threw you into the atmosphere. So I want you to really understand that when I source up, I source up. But I wanted you to pin yourself down with a quote and pin yourself down with some dates so that we can then obliterate them. Thank you.
Got 2 minutes.
I don't even need 2 minutes, brother. Give it to him.
All right, Brother Zion, you got the floor, brother.
What happened?
Yeah, go ahead, my bad.
How many minutes do I have?
You got 5 minutes. Both of y'all get 5 minutes.
He didn't go 5 minutes. He went longer.
That's because your first thing went to 7 minutes.
I know, but you were truncating mine. So can we just keep to that? Because initially we said that there
Zion, he went shorter than you on your. He went shorter than your minutes.
So you don't want to give me 7 minutes?
All right, listen. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm going up now because y'all need more time. I'm giving them 10 minutes, y'all.
Now, let me say this to you.
Thank you. No, it's my time. You can't do that. You can't. Come on,
you haven't
man.
started yet, brother.
What do you mean I haven't started?
Get started. I'm talking about how we're having the debate. There's no clock that started.
I understand that, but I would have done that during my time, not yours.
Hold on, brother.
That's unfair.
Hold on.
You're saying hold on, but it's just unfair.
We're talking about the time frame. This is
your time ain't start yet, Zion.
Right. This is a point of order. It's not about me contesting anything you've said. I'm just saying it is now 11:34. I would not. Okay. I don't want you to give him 10 minutes. I would, if he wants to take the 7. I didn't even take 7 just now. But if he wants to take the 7, I'm good with that. But
okay, because I want to open up the floor. That's going to lead us to another.
Can't go on forever. I'm willing to do 7.
Let's.
All right, guys, Jabari, let him get his 7 minutes.
Let's compromise because again, this is not.
That is a compromise. It was 5, then 10, 7.
Would it be okay if I speak? Seeing that it's still not, I'm about to go. Would it be because you spoke and I'm just trying to respond?
Go ahead.
What I'm saying is that's fine because I actually wasn't looking at the time. And I do realize that you, me, and several other people have things to do the next day too. So that's a fine compromise. We'll do 5 minutes. So start my
7.
7. You got 7 minutes.
Okay, 7 minutes.
I'm good with 7.
I was gonna acquiesce to 5, but 7. Okay.
All right, Jabari, go on mute. Zion, the time is 11:35. Go ahead, brother.
Let me say this. What Jabari just did is intellectual suicide. There's no scholar on earth that tells you that civilization is 15,000 BC. That is so pseudo that you could actually effectually call Jabari from this point onward the pseudo man. No scholar, there is no scholarly consensus for civilization in 15,000 BC. This is what I mentioned earlier, that deception implies ignorance. It's so ignorant. And this is so easy. Again, Jabari knows that he's dealing with a community that is just going to expect that he's going to do the reading. And that's bad because not everybody is like that. Some people are going to go fact check you to know to say 15,000 BC has a civilization is extremely pseudo. And to refer to a camp as a settlement with regard to historical academia is horrible scholarship. Hunter-gatherers had camps. What, hunter-gatherers just walked all day hunting? They never stopped? Where they stopped are called camps. That's why Dr. Ben effectually said Egypt cannot be placed before the civilian period, 10,000 BC. But Jabari wanted to smoke, even though he said he didn't come here for debate, but he was so willing to debate me on things that I'm speaking about 2 or 3 years ago. So let's have the debate I came to have tonight. Let's do that. Jabari, man, you interesting, brother. You are interesting. Let me share my screen. I'm gonna have fun on this one. I'm gonna have fun.
Screen sharing, brother. Screen sharing.
Is my sheet square? How many minutes?
Don't say all your stuff, brother. Don't show all your stuff.
That's fine. He don't have nothing for what I'm bringing. That's clear.
You got 5 minutes.
I got 5 minutes left. All right, watch this.
Yeah.
The scholarly consensus on the oldest civilizations is to consider either Sumer or Kemet. Here's a pre-civilization timeline in Egypt. He said Zion doesn't have dates. Are you kidding me? The current scholarly consensus for when Egypt becomes a united kingdom is 3100 BCE. In the Naqada culture, which is Naqada 1, 2, and 3, which exists from 4000 to 3500 BCE. So there's a culture, or culture in general, precedes what we call civilization. So why does Jabari tell you that he can describe Kemet as a civilization in 15,000 BCE when we know that before civilization, there's what we call culture? Naqada is not a civilization. Naqada is a culture. The culture that precedes the Naqada culture is referred to as the Badarian culture. That's between 5,000 and 4,000 BCE. The Badarian culture provides the earliest direct evidence of agriculture in Egypt. That's why I asked this brother to tell us what defines civilization. Notice he didn't speak about agriculture. I'm curious why. Because in 15,000 BC, there is no agricultural affixing in Kemet at all. What are you talking about? This is so pseudo. The Fayum culture, which comes after the Badarian culture, is 6,000 BCE. Again, we're just talking culture. This is considered by scholars as one of Egypt's oldest cities. Nabta Playa as a culture, which comes before, is dated to 7,500 BCE. And what Nabta Playa is famous for is the Nabta Playa calendar circle used to mark solstices and charted astronomical phenomena. Before 7,500 BCE, Kemet is not placed as a culture because there's nothing going on before 500 BCE. That doesn't mean you don't have people in Kemet. That's why this argument is silly to make. Pre-civilization timeline in Sumer and the Fertile Crescent. In Sumer, you have what's called, or southern Mesopotamia, you have what's called the Halaf culture, which dates to 6100 to 5100 BCE. That's marked by Neolithic pottery. It's stamped with seals, fertility figurines, and farming societies.
2 minutes.
In 6500 BC to 3700 BCE, you have the Obeid culture, which marked by architectural structures such as the Eridu Temple, two-tiered settlements, sickle tools, metal workers, and farmers. The Natufian culture, which precedes them all as a Fertile Crescent culture, is sedentary. It's the first sedentary culture before agriculture, the earliest evidence of agriculture in the world, evidence of Proto-Afroasiatic language, E1B1 DNA traced to the Natufian culture in the Levant, showing you that through migration, the Natufian culture comes into Levant out of Africa and begin the early cultures of the Levant and make their way to Mesopotamia. So when we describe Sumer as being the first civilization, that does not mean that Sumer has all of the hallmarks for civilization first. The hallmarks for civilization begin with the Natufian culture. That is the scholarly consensus. All of these hallmarks coalesce in Sumer to make them the earliest and oldest civilization. Ancient Civilizations of the New World by Richard E.W. Adams. Nile Valley farming started in the 6th century BCE. Brother Jabari, how do you have in 15,000 BCE a Kemetic civilization when you don't have any farming? What are people eating? We know that farming was the key and crucial thing that made for civilization and early cultures to settle down and become what's called a sedentary society. Agricultural development of the Nile Valley and the adjacent Fayum oasis occurs perhaps as early as 6,000 BCE.
1 minute.
Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations, page 22. Fertile Crescent farming in the 10th century BCE. The first farming societies developed in the Fertile Crescent: Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and the Persian Gulf. Egypt's earliest farming is 6,000. You don't have a civilization if you can't eat.
All right, Tom. Zion, you shouldn't be showing your stuff, bro. Come on, man.
I know exactly what he wanted to do, but again, this is why I'm saying this is silly, because he said initially that he didn't come prepared for a debate, but then he began to debate me on things that I said 3 years ago in a debate with him, rather than just debate tonight's topic, which I just thought was silly and a letdown, because in his arena, and somehow it strikes him as if that's something good. But people who do scholarship know that you failed. There is no civilization in 15,000 BC. That would make a statement the king of pseudos.
All right, Brother Jabari. Family. This is the part where y'all got to show some love to Brother Sarnetta. If everybody could just drop 3, 5, whatever you can have, whatever you can spare, show your Brother Sarnetta some love so I can continue to do what I do on my end. Like I said, 5, 3, whatever. We need everybody to come out your pocket. We passing the goddamn plate like the church do, goddamn it. All right? So we passing the plate around. Brother Jabari, as you speak, brother, I should be hearing some things in the Cash App. All right, brother? So let me turn it on. Let me see if I can hear some rings in there. Let me turn my shit on right now. Show some love to your brother, Sonetta. Brother Jabari, the time is 11:44. Hey, I'm gonna give y'all one more round after this, and then we are opening up for the people. Zion, go next, and then Brother Jabari, you can close.
Can we make that last round that we have not a time round where it's me 5 minutes and him 5 minutes, but can we do a back and forth where I'm able to ask him a question and he can answer?
Y'all will ask each other questions first.
Me a question and I can answer.
I'm okay.
Yes, y'all can do that. Yes, no doubt. So, Brother Jabari, the time is 11:45. You got 5 minutes, Jabari.
I'm
7 minutes. I mean,
I was about to say, brother, you just gave him 7.
Yeah.
I'm going second. And I'm glad that we're going to do a back and forth because he still hasn't answered my question about Abraham, intentionally, by the way. So I want you to know that as we sit here, all I'm going to ask you to do, I may not even go for 7 minutes. All I'm going to ask you to do is replay Zion's round because he gives you a long period of time. And he's clearly saying that in the period where he's talking about Sumer, he doesn't tell us that it has the hallmarks of civilization that he is saying that it must have. That's a really big problem. He shows us people being in a region, right? But he doesn't begin to show us domesticated plants and animals. He shows us that much later. And so even according to his own timeline, he has ethered himself. Showing us dates doesn't...
that's my bad.
Yeah, I get it. Showing us dates doesn't answer the question. I was simply showing you that people were in Kemet doing things at a particular time frame. Some of those things, Zion would agree, are culture. But he also says that I'm supposed to be pseudo. You're not saying I'm pseudo. You're saying that the Metropolitan Museum of Art is pseudo. Please show this screen.
Screen is showing.
Because what I did is I showed you how they were talking about Paleolithic cultures. By the way, they're going to go all the way back to 500,000 BCE. And he says that what we're seeing there is not cultures. I want to be clear that even according to the standard that he is now trying to describe, he's saying that at the very least, we're seeing domesticated plants and animals. By the way, domesticated plants and animals means that they are planting plants. That's what domesticated means, right? Domesticated plants and animals. They're even saying 7,000 BCE. That's the date that they're using here. So I want you to go back and look at what he said. Because he gave us a lot of dates. By the way, we have no idea where those dates are from. It's just on his slide. He gave us a lot of dates, and then he doesn't explain to us why what he is saying is correct. In fact, his dates support my argument. They support my argument, not his. I don't know why he did that. By the way, notice that he was harping on Shekanta Diop. I said, Zion, leave it alone. No, I'm back on it. I'm leaving it alone. Zion, please leave it alone. No, why won't he answer the question? And then you see that he is wrong. He's wrong. And didn't even mention it in the last round. Why? Because now he realizes that he's wrong. And not only is he wrong, he's wrong and insulting an ancestor. You need to go, I don't know, do some purification. What do y'all do? I don't know, make a sacrifice of a dove or something like that. Because this is Zion, how you do that? How you do that? You said that it was 4,100. All that Shekanta Diop was saying is that we see signs of civilization at that time. You wanted me to say he was wrong. And what did I say? I said, you have to show us it first. Why? Because I knew that you were sticking your chin out. And I kept saying, Zion, don't stick your chin out. I want to beat you when you're at your best. But you kept sticking it out. I warned you. Now you get to lose again. He read you from page 101 and didn't even read you from page 102. I mean, what? How well did you read this book, Zion? How well did you read it? So I want you to recognize that Zion is always wrong on dates. Always wrong on dates. Uncomfortable about his book, which is still being sold. And also has not answered whether he believes that Abraham is a literal historical person. He just stepped aside. But I saw you sidestep. You got to answer it, brother. And then he was wrong on Sheikh Anta Diop at 3200 BCE. That's the date that we use today. Why did you say that Sheikh Anta Diop was off by 1,000 years? You need to, in fact, I expect you to write a letter to his family and apologize for your transgression. In fact, you know what? You can send it to me first so I can be sure that it gets to them. Because this is messed up. Family, I'm going to leave it here. I want you to recognize that our brother continues to be wrong on dates. I barely even showed you how wrong he is in his book. I barely even showed you that. I could. He even tried to argue that that Abraham's story fits into the time frame. I'm the one that showed you the source that said it does not. He never came with the source. He's so prepared, but he ain't got nothing.
1 minute.
And so, family, I know that Zion is going to go back to the lab because that's what Zion does. And I know that when we have a broader conversation, he's going to come punching even harder. I just need you to acknowledge that tonight he's punching with his arms tied behind his back. And all he's doing, catching a beating.
Crazy, man.
With that, folks, I'm looking forward to you opening the phones because there's a lot for us to discuss.
All right, man. We're gonna go to first you and Brother Zion first for question and answer. Zion, you want to lead this off with asking Brother Jabari any question you got? I think I want to give y'all a minute to answer the question.
If you don't mind, Sonata, I'm just curious as to the placing on the screen, saying Zion still lying, great Bill. I thought we don't be offensive to the guests. What's going on there?
That's a $20 comment that I had to throw up. I don't mean no disrespect, but you know, the brother paid $20 for that comment. I gotta show his shit, man. You know, like if somebody puts something up there, hey, I want my people out there. Where's Zion supporters? I want y'all to support. Throw $20 up in there, 50, whatever. Y'all can stay. Just don't curse Jabari out.
No.
And I got
let me go though, because as they said, the time is getting a little older. So let me go.
How does he end up getting more money from the audience?
Let me say this.
Me up and beat you up. I mean, this brother is.
Let me say this, Sarnetta.
All right, go ahead, brother.
There's no need for me to give in to that. Like I said, I came.
Nah, that was only joking on that, brother. You know that. That's a joke. That was a joke.
Okay.
Yeah.
I came in prepared to have a real intellectual dialogue.
And you're doing that.
I did not come here for personal attacks. Brother Jabari, from the beginning, from the gate, has went into personal attacks. The dialogue started very well, but then Jabari kept saying, Zion's book, something that is off topic. We're talking about the origin of civilization. We're not talking about that. Jabari said, Zion keeps flowing the argument. First and foremost, let me just say something really quick. The quote that Jabari put on the screen from page 102, allow me to read it. I just wonder if this really is a silly community or whether or not people are just down for bad scholarship. The quote says on page 102 by Sheikh Anta Diop, according to the short chronology, 3,200 years before Christ, Egypt was unified into a kingdom under menace, which means he's positing an alternate view, a view, mind you, that he doesn't hold. That's why he mentions according to the short chronology. He doesn't posit that this is his view. Simple reading. He does not posit that this is his view. The previous page showed you his view. That's why this is silly. And again, an ad hominem attack is when a person focuses on personal arguments, making the argument about a person rather than a topic. It's silly. Because what really happens in this arena is Zion is expected to turn up because everybody here wants to see a clown show. I didn't come for a clown show. I came for a real dialogue, real information. I expected better. I'm still prepared to have the dialogue. But if this is what we're going to do, it's silly to me. The question that I want to ask him is this. What makes Kemet a civilization in 15,000 BC, since you hold and have said, you're on record, Kemet is a civilization in 15,000 BC. What makes Kemet a civilization in 15,000 BC?
Well, first, since you had a lot of, I'll respond and then I'll ask you a question and put my interpolation just as you did. Let me say to you that I was actually responding to a comment you made. You said there are no settlements before a particular date. That's what I was doing. So I'm using your definition against you because the Metropolitan Museum says that there are settlements. And then you said, well, it's not a civilization if they don't have farming. So then I reverted back and showed you where they have farming. I'm using your sources, brother, your concepts against you. So I would not, and I want to be clear, I would not argue that at 17,000 BCE, we see all of the hallmarks of a firm civilization in ancient Kemet. I'm not arguing that. I'm saying if you said there were no settlements, here is a reputable site saying that there was. That's all I was doing. And if you want to look at farming, of course you're going to see farming later. In the source that I read to you, it actually said that they were processing animals there. They didn't say plants and animals. It didn't say that they were farming. There was, I don't think that I see a source at farming at 17,000 BCE. But remember, what you did is you changed the goalpost. That's what you were doing. And I want you to know you lose when you have them at 100 yards and you lose when you have them at 50 yards. That's what happened. So that's all I'm going to say to that question. Now is it time for my question to Zion?
Yes.
Okay.
Zion, now you satisfied with that question? You answered it, Jabari?
Jabari did not answer my question at all. I asked Jabari, what makes Kemet a civilization in 15,000 BC?
That's what he asked you, Jabari.
I answered the Sonetta, you weren't even listening.
Right, I wasn't.
So, brother,
I wasn't. You're right.
Come on.
Go ahead.
I said to you, the reason why I showed you 15,000 BC, 17,000 BCE.
Oh, yeah, I heard you.
There were no settlements before that time. So I showed you that there were settlements before 4,000, 5,000 BCE. That's the reason why I mentioned it. And then when you said, well, now I have to show you farming, I showed you a later date. I'm not arguing there was farming in 17,000 BCE. We're beginning to see the hallmarks of a civilization.
Then it's not a civilization because you need that component.
You were the one that made a comment, and then you were proven wrong, brother. That's what happened.
All right, brother Jabari, ask your question, brother.
Okay, so here we go. Now, I want to say that Zion doesn't want me to talk about his book, right? But I want you to be clear that what scholars do is they look particularly at what people have written. And I want you to know, I'm not just being unfair to Zion by looking at his book. Some of you have not read his book. His book is on the topic of the debate. This is from page 1. The first page. I'm going to read you from page 1 and page 2. And Zion, the question I want you to answer is, isn't your book about the topic of the debate? If it is about the topic of the debate, why is it off limits if you're still selling a book on the topic of our discussion?
My book is not about the topic of the debate.
I'm not ready yet, brother. Hold on. Among the earliest civilizations, two stand out the most in terms of antiquity, which are the civilizations of the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, and the Nile Valley, Kemet, Egypt. There are no known civilizations to date which predate the civilizations of the Fertile Crescent and the Nile Valley. From these two very culturally advanced civilizations, the ancient nations, peoples, and cultures received their knowledge of science, mathematics, philosophy, religion. Yet the major debate or question, he even calls it a debate in his book, which has perplexed historians, is which one of these civilizations emerged first? Then one paragraph down, from the point of view of archaeology, the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, and the Nile Valley civilizations did not emerge contemporaneously, but in fact, one does predate the other. The archaeological record says that Sumerian civilization began around 5500 to 4000 BCE, while it dates Egyptian or Kemetic civilization to 3500 to 3100 BCE. The topic of his book is what we're discussing, and he don't want me to bring up his book. Yet he's still selling it. It's not like he said this needs to be reworked. He was ready to critique Sheikh Anta Diop for something he said that he didn't say. But he doesn't want me to talk about the book, which is about the same topic we're discussing. So here is my question again, brother. Here's my question again. If the topic of your book is about comparing these two civilizations, then why is it unfair for me to bring up your book when we're having a discussion which compares these two same civilizations?
I mean, let me do this really quick. Again, let me say this to the community. If y'all allow Jabari to say that Kemet is a civilization in 15,000 BC, y'all are all canceled. Smash Rockwell down the line because y'all know that's BS. The commentary section, the crowd, they might not know, but all y'all scholars know that is extremely pseudo. Kemet is not a civilization in 15,000 BC. That's why this is interesting. I asked Jabari to define what civilization is. He purposely didn't define civilization because once that definition is on the floor, then he can't say the pseudo stuff he's telling you. Finding an encampment in 15,000 BC that equates as civilization? This is so silly. It's not even funny. You are not prepared to debate me. I see why you didn't want to debate me. Now to answer your question. Jabari says Zion doesn't want to talk about his book, even when the topic of his book is the origin of civilization. Chapter 1 in my book deals with the origin of the civilization. Chapter 1. It's not the topic of the book. It's a chapter in the book. You're so silly. Chapter 1, the dynastic race theory, which deals with the question of whether or not Kemet becomes the oldest civilization, older than Sumer. Chapter 2, the Falcon tribe, which goes into the mythologies and the traditions associated with Kemet from the Old Kingdom period onwards. Chapter 3, language. Chapter 4, more mythology. Chapter 5, mythology. Jabari, you are failing to people who have common sense. The topic of my book is not civilization. It's a chapter in my book. And you are too intelligent of a grown man to not know that a chapter doesn't equate to the topic of a book. Come on, Jabari. That's why I said this is silly. Apart from you saying 15,000 BC, Kemet is a civilization. So let me remind the community and even Jabari now, since he done put himself out there. In order to be a civilization, you need all of these components. You need to have writing. There's no writing in Kemet in 15,000 BC. You need to have agriculture. Kemet has no agriculture. You need to have a rule of law, a monarchy, governmental structure. You don't have that in 15,000 BC. You need sophisticated systems of irrigation. You don't have that in 15,000 BC. This is common sense to anybody that studies. So why are y'all allowing Jabari to tell you that Kemet is a civilization in 15,000 BC? Because we have an encampment. Y'all don't know that hunter-gatherers, where they station is called an encampment? You mean to tell me y'all don't know that? This is so silly. So now I get to ask him a question. And watch my question. Question, Brother Jabari. What are the key components that make Kemet a civilization? Can you define for us when Kemet became a civilization by date? Tell us. And then show us how that date that you said Kemet becomes a civilization fulfills all the requirements to be called a civilization.
I was actually doing, oh, can you hear me? Yes.
We hear you.
First, what I was saying, what you have to hear is what I was actually doing is responding to you. I did not say that Kemet is a full-blown civilization at 17. You keep saying 15. I'm talking about 17,000. You said that there are no settlements before, I believe the date you gave was 4,000. So I was showing you settlements at 17,000. And then you said, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about farming. So then I showed you a source that says that there was farming in Kemet at latest at 7,000 BCE. I was responding to you. I did not say that Kemet has a full-blown civilization at 17,000. If you know what a straw man is, then you should know that what you are doing is a straw man argument. And I want to also say, in response to what you just said, he claims that that is just the topic of his first chapter, the dynastic race. I read you from chapter 1 and chapter 2. He's being a little disingenuous here. He says it's the Falcon tribe. Falcon tribe starts on page 13. On page 14, he says, a theory based in archaeological findings which indicated the pre-dynastic Egypt, there was an invasion of a superior group of Asiatics who conquered pre-dynastic Egypt, who came by the way of Mesopotamia and Sumeria. By the way, he uses the word Sumeria, which is really an outdated term. But I want you to recognize that that's chapter 2. Chapter 3, notice he says chapter 3 is, he gives you what it's about, language, but he doesn't tell you what the name of the chapter is. Slick Zion. Chapter 3 is called The Sumerian Origin of the Hieroglyphs. That when he says it's about language, yes, it is about language, but he's also once again positing that Sumer is before Kemet in that chapter. He says chapter 4 is about myth. He doesn't give you the title of the chapter. The title of the chapter is The Gods of Egypt Birthed in Sumeria. Once again, he uses an outdated term. I want you to recognize that this is what the book is about, folks. I read his book. And then chapter 5 is weighing the heart. And you should already know that he's going to argue that it is the Sumerian. And now he gets straight into the biblical narrative in this chapter where they get the concepts from. This book is about Sumer being primary to Kemet. That's what the book is about. And he doesn't want me to use it. The topic is the origin of civilization, Sumer or Nile Valley. You could even say Sumer or Kemet. And he wrote a book, which he is selling on Amazon right now on the topic. That's the topic, y'all. And he doesn't want me to bring it up. You know why he doesn't want me to bring it up? Because the book shows how faulty his arguments are. He also says that I had ad hominems. I haven't insulted Zion at all. I think he's wrong. I think he's confused. There are no ad hominem. I'm not making personal attacks. He thinks a personal attack is mentioning his book. That's a personal attack? If mentioning your book is a personal attack, your book got problems. I mean, I don't even understand what he's saying. So I've answered all of your questions. You have not answered mine.
So
you still need to answer
whether. Can we hold him to answer the question?
Also, I answered all of your questions.
You did not answer.
He asked you a last question just now.
Wait a minute. And
let me say this once more.
Hold up, let him finish, Zion. You got to let him finish.
I'm going to stop in a second. He also did not answer whether he believed Abraham was a literal character. Why won't he answer us? You know why? Because he's basing this on faith, not history.
All right, Brother Zion, go ahead.
All right, let me get this out the way really quick. Apparently, either Jabari is extremely disingenuous, which is really starting to sound like you are, which is taking credit and points away from you that I really gave you. I did say earlier when speaking about the narrative that the Bible speaks of Abraham, which you tried to fumble and say, why aren't you saying that Abraham is historical? I said to you that it is certainly my belief that Abraham is historical, and I said I'm not going to enter my belief into the discussion. So how come you didn't get that when I said that over an hour ago? That's why this is silly to me. I said to you, I'm not going to inject my belief into a historical dialogue. I said that to you an hour ago. But you continue to say, why didn't Zion Lex tell us whether or not he believes Abraham is historical? Something I said an hour ago, which means, Jabari, you're not listening. All you're doing is wanting to have an answer without hearing your opponent. That's why you're doing miserably, by the way, because you still haven't answered the question that I'm sure the community knows, even your community. Don't worry, Jabari. They're going to type that they love you, but behind the scenes, they're going to be like, why he didn't answer the question? Because the question I asked you is simply, when did Kemet become a civilization? Based on 15,000 BC, the date that you used. And what is the criteria for civilization? And show us how that all fits in. Instead, you talked about Zion Lex's book. I'm going to play this back verbatim, by the way. You talked about Zion Lex's book. You said Zion Lex is not dealing with the Abraham question. You didn't answer that question at all, which means you failed. I don't care what the comment section is, Jabari. I'm an actual scholar. You lost the debate. And what matters most to me is you know you lost the debate because you failed at the basic fundamental questions. You actually said on live TV, which we can consider in some form YouTube is today, Kemet is a civilization of 15,000 BC. Then you said something even more silly than that. You tried to backpedal. You said, well, I didn't say Kemet is a full-blown civilization. Jabari, respectfully, what the hell do you mean by full-blown civilization? It's not even a term, buddy, in academia. It's either you are a civilization or you are a pre-civilization, which is referred to academically as a culture. We don't refer to pre-civilization as a, oh, it's not, sort of short of a full, Jabari. You smarter than this. But what I'm enjoying most is to watch and know that you lost. You said Kemet is a civilization in 15,000 BC, then came back and said, no, they're not a full-blown civilization. You don't get more pseudo than that.
All right. Question. All right. Now I'm opening up the floor, Jabari. Family, let me bring in the brother, Mr. Wilkes. And I want to thank everybody for the love, for the donations. Brother, you got the floor. Do you have a question, brother?
Yes, sir. I have a question side, and I'm gonna ask a question because I know it's a lot of people that want to, do stuff. So I'm gonna keep it quick.
All right, let's get it.
I want to ask both of the brothers, do they know the definition of pseudepigrapha? Do the brothers know the definition of pseudepigrapha, meaning that you can have false things written down? That's all I got, for the panel. And I'll stay on side if I can ask another question, but I'm gonna mute myself right now.
All right. Who would like to go first?
Zion, you wanna mention it?
No, I don't want to mention it.
He asking both of y'all the questions. So y'all go ahead. Go ahead, Jabari.
I think that I am familiar with it. I am familiar with the concept. The concept that you're going to see writings that are not necessarily based on historical events that have occurred. And I think that it's very interesting. They tend to use it a lot, by the way, when they're talking about the early Jewish writings, the early Hebrew writings. That's where they tend to use that phrase.
Okay, brother, you got another question?
Zion, I respect you, brother. I if you could just speak on it for 1 second, just 1 second on pseudepigrapha. Just 1 second, brother, please. I respect you highly.
What do you want me to speak towards about pseudepigrapha?
Just do you believe that there are false writings? Sometimes people write things down, and try to embellish a story that was not there. Do you believe that?
Absolutely. And you find that across the board in all cultures, or you can say many cultures. I don't want to speak in absolute. Several cultures you can find pseudepigrapha writings. One of them is referred to as the Apocrypha, which in our tradition, it was never considered part of the Hebrew Tanakh. That was part of the Christian Bible at one point, and even they took it out. But the Hebrew Tanakh never included those writings because of the idea that they weren't fully trusted, because we know that many of them were written and curated by the very people that we were going against and fighting.
Okay, Sai, thank you, brother, for giving me some time, and thank these brothers. This I don't know, y'all saying it's sparring, but it looked like a fight to me.
And y'all really ain't seen nothing yet. Because y'all ain't seen nothing yet. Trust me. On the debate, you're gonna see like maybe 100 goddamn slides, man. For real.
Well,
coming from Zion.
Guess what? I'm stepping up as a brother that supports y'all brothers. I'm paying $100 on each side. on
Right,
each
that's
side,
what's
you
up.
know, and I'm gonna pay side 100 for, you know, being the Don King that he is.
Thank
You
you,
know,
brother.
let's spend
Yes,
some
sir.
money with our people, man. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Now I mute
Yes,
my
sir.
mic. Thank you, brothers, for the
My
time.
man. My man. Peace, brother. Do you have a question, brother?
Yeah, I do. Zion, I just want to ask, what is the oldest date for Sumer? And Jabari, I'm asking you the same thing in regards to Kemet, so I could just have a clear understanding on the dating aspect that y'all placing out there.
Excellent. The oldest date for
Or
Sumer,
the civilization wise.
the oldest date for Sumer as a civilization is 3500 BC. You don't have a civilization, not just in Sumer, but anywhere in the world before 3500 BC, and to which Sumer has the first.
Okay, same thing for you though, Jabari.
I would have to say to you, am I unmuted? You can hear me, right?
Yes, we hear you.
I would have to say to you that we see civilization in Kemet as at least 4000 BCE. Scholars now are even able to recognize that we're seeing proto-writing in Kemet at that time. That's not something that we heard 15 years ago, right? So there have been some new analysis that say that we see that as well. Now, let me be clear that civilization has several hallmarks. And so when I say we don't see full-blown civilization, what I am saying is there's a particular time when we're not seeing all of the hallmarks. Zion says that when we don't see all the hallmarks, we just call it a culture. I don't know where he got that from. Culture is a phrase that is used in analyzing ancient cultures and modern cultures. You don't just say something's a culture because it's not a civilization. I don't know where he got that from, but that is one of the things that he says. So it's really important for us to understand that.
I get it. I just want to have that understanding on the dates y'all saying. So that's cool. All right, so y'all stay up, man. Peace.
You can ask another question if you want.
Oh,
all right,
no,
family, where y'all at, man? Damn, y'all wanted to ask the question. Here we go. We're going to end the show if y'all not coming in to ask the questions, man.
I got a lot more questions, but I want to give everybody else some time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that clarity right there. That's all. I'm clear on that. I understand.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. All right, so Mr. Wilkes, come on, man. You can come back in. Ain't nobody else here but you, brother. Turn the camera on.
All right, let me get back. Let me get back in.
Can we settle in? We're gonna close tonight as well, Sonetta, because I got a very early morning.
Okay, yes, it is 12 o'clock. Yeah, it is 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
So go ahead, ask another question, brother.
Okay, when it comes to Kemetic science, this is directed, at my brother Jabari directly. When it comes to the Kemetic science, when you study in the Metanessa, it's very difficult to understand. Do you need to have a priest in order to understand the Metanessa? That's my question.
Do you need to have a priest to be able to understand the language?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm asking. Yes, sir.
I don't know if I would make that argument. I do believe that when we look at these ancient societies, we are seeing societies that are not secular like we see societies are today, right? So spirituality is part and parcel of everything that they do. It's not like it's, in the United States, there's a separation, right? But that separation didn't exist in the ancient world. So being familiar with the spiritual systems of ancient Kemet would make it easier for you to understand the language. But I'm not going to argue that you need a priest per se to be able to understand the language.
All right.
Okay, thank you, brother. And if I could, I want to ask, brother Lex, a question. If I could, Donetta, if I'm overbuilding the time or overpowering anybody, I shut my mic down. I just want to ask one more question.
Let me shut it down right quick because we got to get out of here. Jabari got to get out of here too. And people coming in, I want them to get their question out real quick.
Okay, I'm gonna mute my mic, brother.
All right, no doubt. All right, what's up, God? God, what's happening? Talk to me. Do you have a question, God?
Peace. Thank you for the time, everybody. Zion Lex, I like how you went into the things with the cultures too, because from my understanding, right, and this is what I want to ask you, and Jabari, you could chime in on this too. the Olmecs, the Maya, the Aztecs, right? Those were American civilizations, right? Started by peoples that lived here in the Americas with an American culture. From my understanding, the Europeans, right, when they came over here on the American land, they established a European civilization. Would you agree with that, Jabari? I mean, Zion and Jabari, you could chime in too.
I wouldn't agree that the Olmecs are a civilization before any of the civilizations that we're contending right now. Which I'm not even sure is part of the point that you're making.
That wasn't my question.
I think what you're essentially saying is, are they a civilization? So the question of are they a civilization?
Can I clear up my question? Can I clear up my question?
Yes.
Thank you, my brother. I was actually contextualizing my European question. The question is about Europeans, right? I was using the Olmecs, Maya, and Aztecs to contextualize. And what I'm saying is, I'm pretty sure we would agree that the Olmecs, the Maya, and the Aztecs were American civilizations, right? Because their culture is from their civilization is from a people whose culture is in the Americas. Now with that, this is my question. Would you agree that when the Europeans came here during colonialism, they did not establish an American civilization because those were foreigners coming here? And an American civilization would be characterized by the Olmecs or the Maya. Would you agree that when the colonialists came over here, they brought European culture with them, so they established a European civilization? Even though we know down the line America has taken on some unique qualities that differentiate a little bit, but at its inception, wouldn't you agree that because these Europeans came here, they established a European civilization and moved out the American civilizations? Would you agree to that?
Okay, so certainly when they came here, Europeans, they pushed away, I'm not going to say American, because I don't think any of the civilizations that you named would use such a term. So I think the term that we should employ,
they're anachronistic.
Right. So I think the term that we should, I think the term we should employ is the indigenous cultures. So those indigenous cultures that were here and had their own culture long before people got here. Yes, when the Europeans, which are truly the people who are referred to as Americans, when they got here, they did away with their culture. Right. So one of the works that speak heavily towards this, someone that I follow immensely, he's of Guyanese descent. His name is Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. And in his works, he goes through extreme lengths to show exactly how Europeans began to break down and dismantle indigenous civilization and cultural traits, and even begin to ascribe some of those high motifs to themselves.
All right, brother. No, hold on, brother. Brother Jabari, would you like to expound on that, or we can move to the next question?
I'm gonna be brief. I think that that what might be happening is Zion is using some terms in a way that's kind of slippery. So that I don't mean slippery as in disingenuous. I mean slippery as in there's less integrity to the term, so it's becoming confusing. He said that if you don't have a civilization, you have a culture. Now he makes it sound like those groups of people that existed here before the Europeans came here have a culture, which by extension would mean they didn't have a civilization. And I would agree with the brother's comment that when the Europeans got here, clearly there were civilizations here. We even see some of them with writing. We see them with cultivation of both animals and of fields. We see them with advanced architecture, some mathematics. We're seeing a civilization.
All right, so I definitely want to respond as well.
Wait a minute.
Because,
Zion, you can't cut the brother off while he's talking.
That doesn't predate the civilizations. Zion said this, and I agree with him on this point. That certainly doesn't predate the civilizations that we're talking about in Africa and in the Fertile Crescent, though.
All right, so let me
respond. Hey, Zion, hold on. You already responded, Zion. I don't want this to be a back and forth.
No, but
because if you come back again, then Jabari gonna want to come back. You know,
I'm sure if I misrepresented what he said, that he would need to say something, because I didn't say what he just said. That's what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
All right, so
Can I clear it up?
I would like to clear up what I said. So what I said, relates to his question. I said that I don't think that any of those civilizations were civilizations before the ones we mentioned. I didn't negate that they're a civilization. So why did Jabari say that? And in this part right now, we're listening to what people are calling and questioning, and Jabari's turning around still trying to debate me. This is sad on your part.
All right, Morpheus, you on the call, Morpheus. You on the
Yo,
call.
peace. Let me ask a question, because I haven't heard you bring up Gobekli Tepe, right? And as far as what I'm studying, when I'm reading, that seems to be, from my studies, from what I'm reading, research, over 7,000, 8,000 years, right? So that and Naphtha Playa, are you considering those a civilization? Is Gobekli Tepe, because I'm reading here, they said it's a civilization. Right? Are you Brother Lex? Are you is it your contention that's a civilization?
No. So a lot of things you see online and even in books, unless it's being characterized in sync with current academia, that doesn't have to be valid, right? Just like how you can go online and see someone saying that a civilization is in 15,000 BC when we all know that that's pseudo. So let me be clear on something. One of the reasons why Gobekli Tepe is not considered a civilization, because Gobekli Tepe has not met all 5 requirements, something that I'm going to share my screen in my response to show. And this also proves why Jabari lost the debate.
All right.
What are Sonetta? I'm sharing my screen.
Go ahead, brother. My bad.
To answer his question, I'm sharing my screen.
Oh, go ahead, brother.
And I'm also noting this is the reason why Jabari lost the debate. What are the 5 requirements for a civilization? Those 5 characteristics are advanced cities. There is no advanced cities in the Gobekli Tepe site, nor in Naphtha Playa. There aren't cities. Specialized workers, complex institutions, record keeping, advanced technology. This is why, and again, I'm not sure if everybody caught this, but Brother Reggie said it so skillfully. The definition of civilization has to be defined before we go into the dialogue. Because if the definition of civilization is not on the table, then we'll be doing silly things like what Jabari's been doing all night. Kemet has an encampment in 15,000 BC. So, they're not a full-blown civilization yet, but, it's short of less of us. That's silly. You have to have all of those components to be a civilization. And it's like you move in the goalposts when you know, as a historian, I'm not sure if I can call him a scholar after tonight, when you have to have all of those components together. You can't not have one and be considered a civilization. This was
brother Reggie. Go ahead and answer this, because I know this is an easy knockdown for you. I mean, brother Jabari. Knock this, brother Jabari. Go ahead and down for us.
Can I respond?
Brother, you can't speak. You're speaking out of turn. Brother Jabari, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to say that, first of all, not every historian agrees on all of the hallmarks that Zion says are historical. He's making it sound like there's one rubric that everyone uses, and that's not the case. Many historians tend to actually agree on some of those items, but not of others. We have to understand that there are many people in the world today that still don't have a written language. Are we saying they're not part of a civilization? So I want you to understand that the way that he's giving us this definition is challenging. But even if we used his standard of definition, you would see that Kemet is a society, a civilization, before we see it in Sumer. And that doesn't mean that Sumer isn't amazing. That doesn't mean that Sumer isn't founded by people that I argue might also be African. It just isn't older. And that's the reality. He says I lost the debate because I didn't a definition that he wanted me to give. I gave him my definition. He says, you didn't give one from the dictionary. This is bizarre. This is bizarre. He actually asked many different things, and even got caught lying on Sheikh Gio, and he still thinks he won. I'm thinking that he might be a little confused here. Now, with regard to Gobekli Tepe, one of the reasons why I think that we see advanced architecture but not other things, is because there are a lot of things at Göbekli Tepe that we do not see. And so most people say that it is amazing. By the way, Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey, modern day Turkey. We don't see all of the things that we would assume. There's a lot of questions about the Göbekli Tepe site and about the people that were there. Where did they live? Did they cultivate food or have did they actually domesticate animals? There are some questions that we still have about Göbekli Tepe, but it is very, very early. And so that is of critical. Finally, I want to say the only reason why I showed you 17,000, and you have to be clear about this, is because Zion said there were no settlements, and I showed you that the Metropolitan Kingdom said that there were settlements.
You showed encampments.
And when someone swings at you and you dodge the punch and punch them back, they're gonna get upset because they're gonna say that you dodged them, you're not taking punches. The reality is all I gotta do is punch you. And that's what I did in this debate.
Okay. Let's move on. Chris, you on the call, Chris. What's happening?
What's going on? What's going on? Peace, brother Jabari. Peace, brother Zion. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I have like somewhat of a multi-part question, and I'm asking both of you. So I want you to just replace Sumer for Kemet accordingly, okay? So I understand that both Sumer and Kemet kept, very detailed records and things of that nature. Did Sumer keep detailed records acknowledging Kemet's existence as a civilization after them, and vice versa for Kemet and Sumer, Jabari? So I'm asking that to Brother Zion and Brother Jabari.
Okay, that question would be both, I would say, a little loaded as well as a bit subjective, and I'll explain to you why. There would be no reason for Sumer to record that Kemet is a civilization. That's a conversation that we're having looking back at the past, right? Same way Kemet doesn't have a record saying Sumer is a civilization. That's something that we, so many years removed, thousands of years removed from them, not having their full stories being told by them in terms of what they acknowledge, and we are the ones who are coming with those questions. So that's why I say it's a bit loaded and a bit subjective, because you wouldn't find that they would need to put that in their record to say Sumer is a civilization, the people of Kemet, or Sumer to say Kemet is a civilization.
All right, boys.
I would agree
with
that.
All right. Yo, who's that with the music? Who's that with the noise? All right, let's move forward. Kwame Ma'at, he's off. He's not here. Let me get him out of here. Chuck Morgan is in the building. Peace and black power to you, my brother Chuck Morgan. What's happening? You got a question, brother?
Hey, brother. How do you feel? How's everyone? How's the panel?
All right, good, brother.
Excellent, brother.
Good. All right. I just had a quick question because I know there's short on time for brother Jabari. This one is directed to the brother Zion Lex. Just a quick question. I do recall watching a couple of your videos that you had mentioned something to the effect that the Cushites were the people of Kish. Well, my direct question is based on Genesis chapter 10, 8 and 9, that name Cush, would that be in reference, as far as you know, would that be speaking about the people or the civilization of Kish in Sumer?
Good question. Samuel Noah Kramer mentioned in his book, The Sumerians, that one of the key markers for Kushite presence in Sumer at that point in history is the place name, the toponym Kish. And so through linguistic analysis and study, he connects in his book, The Sumerians, how it can be said or inferred that the place name Kish as a reference to the presence of the people we know as Cush, especially as it meshes with the biblical narrative that the beginning of the Kushite kingdom is in that region.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. May I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, and one of the things that I've learned is that many of the Assyriologists of the past, as we move forward in this this information, at least as it pertains to Sumer, a lot of the older things that have been said over the years may have been rendered somewhat obsolete. Not taking anything away from Dr. Soam, Noah Kramer, but in back into what we just mentioned, you are familiar with the fact that we do have two words in Sumerian for Cush. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware that most cultures of that time period have several names to designate the same nation place. In Kemet, they have several names to refer to the people of Kush as well. So I'm very familiar with that. And also, I want to respond by saying this to you. When you mentioned that and I'm going to be a little bit more detailed, when you mentioned that in the region of southern Mesopotamia, that there's this place named Kish that I referred to a couple of years ago, that is in some way related to the term Kush. Let me first do something. In my experience of looking through cuneiform texts that deal with the Akkadian narrative as well as the Sumerian narrative, the first thing I've come to realize is we have no way of knowing what the vowels are. Because just like Hebrew and just like Medu-Neter, there is not vowels attached to the text itself originally so as to know what the original pronunciation is. So what that literally means, and I'm sure you know this, is that the term Kish could very well be pronounced as Kush. But European scholars were very purpose in making it Kish so as not to make it Kush, because that would make it seem something we know, which is that the ancient Nubians, the ancient Ethiopians, the ancient Kushites made their way to that region. So European scholars are the ones that coined the term Kish. Why did they say Kish? There's no reference in the text for that vocalization. I hope we're clear.
All right, let's move on. We got to move on, brother.
Moving on, brother.
Okay.
All right.
I'll do a PowerPoint on that. Refuting that.
Easy work.
If I could,
not easy, not for me.
If I could just say this really quickly, and I'll be very brief. We don't have any assertion of that place that we sometimes call Nubia today as being called Kush at the time frame that he's referring to either. So I think that this is just one of those things where sometimes people say that things sound the same, might be the same. There's nothing wrong with that starting your analysis, but if it ends your analysis, then you probably have a problem.
So let me respond.
All right. No, come on. We got to move forward, y'all. Come on, man. We got the Prince of Tanzania in the building. The Prince of Tanzania. What's going on, Mighty Hebrew in the building? Prince Charlene Dane. Unmute yourself, brother. Go ahead. We hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, you can hear me. Good. Giving all praise and honor to Yahuwah. It was a powerful presentation. You did a great job, Maury Abdiel, Zion Lex. My question that I have is for Brother Jabari. Shalom, Hotep, Brother Jabari.
Peace, brother. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if I was muted or not. Peace.
Okay. How you feeling today?
Shalom and Hotep. Let me say yes to greet you.
Hallelujah. Shalom, Hotep. Quick question: the academia consensus. Most of academia consensus say that Sumer is older than Kemet. My question to you is, well, it's two questions within one. Why do you subscribe to Kemet being older than Sumer when academia consensus say that Sumer is older? That's my first question. Could you answer that?
I would disagree with you on your assertion that it is an academic consensus that Sumer is older than Kemet. One of the things that we also should look at when we do see some scholars say what you just said is we have to look at what they're comparing. You can't look at one place and say we're looking at an orange and we're going to compare the age of an apple. But on one side, you're looking at the apple seed that creates the tree that creates the apple. On the other side, you're looking at the fruit that comes from a tree. The challenge that we have is very often when you look at people saying one is older, they will give the date 31 or 3200 for ancient Kemet. Once you see that, you should know that they're not comparing these two things adequately, because they'll then look at proto-Sumer and then dynastic Kemet. And you can't do it that way. What you have to do, if you're going to look at Proto 1, you got to look at Proto 2. And so that's part of the challenge that we often have. So when you see scholars do that, you can even question them. Why does this continue to happen? Let me just say this very quickly. One of the reasons why it continues to happen is because many Western scholars don't want to look at Kemet before 3100 because the sources of Kemet before 3100 more clearly point to its south. They would rather say Kemet seems to come out of nowhere. That's what they like to say, when in reality, the Kemetic people told us where they came from. We see some of the things that seem to become Kemetic narrative, Kemetic symbolism, Kemetic spirituality in Nubia prior to that. So that's the problem that we have. When we have Western scholars that want to look at dynastic Kemet and then proto-Sumer, you're going to have problems. And the reality is you have to look at the beginnings of both. Finally, we have to also recognize that Sumer does not last as long. The other thing that some people do is they smash together Sumer with the Akkadians, with the Syrians, with the Chaldeans, and so on and so on and so on. And that also is really suspect. If you question a scholar who does that, they will relent. I have done it. They'll say, yes, we have some problems with the way that we did that.
Okay. And last question on the same topic. From your research, what is your date of dynastic Kemet, the first dynastic Kemet, and your date of the beginning of Sumer from your research?
Well, I think you're talking to me still. Yes,
yes. That's the last. Remember, I said I had 2 questions. So that's my second question. Through your research, okay.
I'm good with answering. I think that what we begin to see when we look at dynastic Kemet, we see dynastic Kemet at around 3200, right? That's when the 2 lands are placed together. We see what we could call dynastic Kush a little earlier. Dynastic Kush is a little earlier. But the challenge that we have is what we need to do. What's this brother showing his? What's going on, man? What?
Hey, come on, brother. We brothers in here, man. We ain't, please, stop your camera if you could.
It was strange. What we need to do is we need to compare apples and oranges and oranges. So if we're going to look at proto one, we have to look at proto the other. The dates for Kemet and what some, even according to Zion's assertions of what the hallmarks of civilization are. By the way, you should know that all scholars don't agree on all of those things, right? Some scholars say that there's some things in others, and other things are not in others. I mean, that's just the reality, right? That's the reality. You have to have a written language, right? Is the United States a civilization? Because the written language of the United States comes from another country. The United States doesn't have its own script. It comes from England. Is the United States a civilization? By that standard, the answer would have to be no. So I want you to recognize that there is no general consensus on all of the items, right? But when we look at when people come into a region, when we seem to see the hallmarks of organized society, those dates are earlier for Kemet than they are for Sumer. And I think that that's what we need to acknowledge. Now, Sumer is amazing. I'm not trying to say anything negative about Sumer. It's just I'm looking at the sources, and we just need to acknowledge what we see.
Big brother Jabari, if I could, just
for 1 second. Not right now, brother. Not right now.
Okay, I'm gonna mute my mic, sir. I'm sorry. I'm gonna mute my mic.
What was your date? What was your date? What was your date of Sumer, Jabari? I was saying Sumer and Kemet. I think you thought I said Kush. What was your date for Sumer?
For dynastic Sumer, some people say that it's anywhere between 3,500 and 3,300 for dynastic Sumer, for the time when we see a row of kings or queens in line.
Okay.
That's the date they usually.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to the brother Afro.
Okay, so that's a little bit.
Afro will be.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, brother. Afro, you on the call, brother.
All praises to you, Habashim Yamashai. Hey, what's going on, Jabari? Shalom and Hotep, brother.
Shalom and Hotep, brother. Good to see you.
I wanted to ask, brother Jabari, is there a connection between West Africa and ancient Sumer?
I don't have credit. I don't think that we have a credible connection between West Africa and ancient Sumer. At least not yet. That we're able to find that. So I would have to say at this point, no. However, I'm going to honestly also say to you that there is a paucity of research on ancient West Africa. That's a major problem because most of the folks doing research are in European nations. And so there is a lot of information that we don't have about Southern Africa, about Western Africa. We know that people were there. Why is it that we have done so little archaeological evidence, for example, in Southeastern Africa, prior to Nubia, Kemet, all of those things? The only way that we begin to find that they have advanced societies is we find an artifact that someone seems to look at. Like when you look at the Shango bone or the Lobombo bone, these show us that we have Africans doing mathematics tens of thousands of years before we see it in the West. Those dates are so aged that they're amazing, but that's all that we have. We have very little else because there's very little architectural work being done in those archaeological work being done in those places.
All right, we're going to move on to the last and final question, and then I'm going to let these two giants here close us out. JJ, turn on your camera. We know you are happy to be home, brother. We know you are happy to be home.
Yeah, man. Oh,
but,
man, here goes JJ.
But I could speak for all of us when I say that you don't have to show us your body, brother. We are all men in here.
Hey, that pack hurt no boy.
In here, brother.
Hey, that shit pack hurt no. I'm gonna keep my camera off. I'm gonna keep my camera off so I don't say none of you guys.
Go ahead, brother.
None of you old guys.
Just ask the question. This is not.
Hold up, man. You're messing up my homecoming now. So now, goddamn.
Go ahead,
hey,
brother.
man, this was a powerful discussion, man. First, I want to give all praise to Yahweh Bashim, Yahweh Shai Balakada. You know what I'm saying? Hey, I know some of y'all mad. I know you is, but JJ home. That's right. And hey, I'm coming back with a vengeance. Jabari, I've been thinking about 8 days I was locked up. I ain't lying. Cause hey, remember I was saying, hey, there ain't no Book of the Dead in the goddamn jail. Yeah, it was. I said, goddamn, it's a Book of the Dead in here. Hey, what the hell going on, everybody? But guess what I found out?
Where you found that book in the library, JJ?
It was in one of the libraries, man.
Oh,
hey,
man.
So let me ask you this question. Great job, Zion. I want to tell you. You caught him up in the beginning.
JJ, I'm telling you this right away. I'll pay you $500 to debate Black Jesus. I'll pay you $500 a piece.
All right, let him go because we got to
hold on. Hey, like I say, shout out to the Lions, then. Shout out to everybody. And shout out to Witch Hunter, my main hater. Go subscribe to his channel because he's a book of lies. But anyway, back to the topic. Hey, Zion, I want to congratulate both of y'all, man. I ain't gonna lie, it was a battle, man. Battle of wits, battle of strategy. I both of y'all was coming. But hey, Zion set it up in the beginning when he said about the civilization, because Jabari, there is no dynasty 1700 BC. You had to tell me that the king, because they wouldn't call them pharaohs back then. But that's beside the point. That's beside the point, man. You did a great job, Zion, because he set it up from the beginning, and Jabari fell for the trap. That's what I caught. And then Jabari is good because this is what he did to me, him and I's debate. He'll start crying over the time and this and that, because he's a strategist. I give him that. But what I'm saying, Jabari, let me ask you this. Do you subscribe to E. Wallace Budge? Hello?
When you say, do I subscribe to E.A. Wallace Budge? What do you
yes. That's what I asked you, sir.
Are you saying that I don't understand the question you're asking? Could you clarify it a little?
Yeah. So you understand it, huh?
No, I don't.
Do you deal with his books?
I think that E.A. Wallace.
Yeah, I got him.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm listening.
I think that E.A. Wallace Budge says a lot that is really good. I think that he gets some things wrong. Some of what he's writing is very old. Sometimes people who have problems with E.A. Wallace Budge they haven't really read him extensively.
You know what I'm saying?
It is become in vogue for folks, particularly because he's a European, to say that they don't like his work. But when you ask them whether they've read his work, when he connects Asar to sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, that there are very few other Western or European scholars that were doing that kind of work at the time that he was. So I have respect for his work. I don't think he gets everything right, but I certainly think that they are certainly worth reading. And the other thing about
this is part of my discovery. So I see.
I know.
Hold on, listen, Jabbar. See, listen. I went per se. Listen. I went per se in my case. You see, that's why JJ out. You see, but I'm gonna tell you about that in my book. But go ahead. Let's see. I went per se. So this is part of my discovery. Now you deal with Ewald's buzz, yes or no? That's what you're saying. You say you respect his work, right?
Just answered the question. Yes, I do.
Okay, good. Now watch this. Now, in some of his books that I read when I was incarcerated,
brother,
you understand, he actually gives a list and some of the things they were saying gods, Jabari. They were saying gods. Do you remember you said it was just a principle? See, I caught you. See, you didn't think JJ was gonna go dig into the Book of the Dead. Yeah. So what I would like to have a discussion. Listen, I'm gonna do a reading. You and we're gonna do a reading.
All right, JJ.
No, I got him on the road because this is supposed to be me and him and I's debate. Remember? Before I left, you said you would debate.
Brother. Welcome home.
Yeah. You better say it. Hey, you should have threw in the towel a long time ago. Congratulations, Zion. Hey, welcome home. Free JJ 7 t-shirt. Free JJ 7,000 t-shirts coming out soon. Shalom.
How was the bologna?
Man, it was horrible, boy. Hey, listen. I had a stack of noodles. Hey, listen. But on a serious tip, man. Hey, my last day. Hey, one of the Aryan dudes tried to talk crazy to me. Told me he didn't like the J. Hold on, I told you the bologna was horrible, bro. Hey, the cornbread that had sweet cornbread. You gotta know how to mix and match.
Yo, stop screaming, Jabari. Relax.
I'm screaming because he's trying to listen. I'm not.
Have some decorum. Look at Zion over here. He's chilling. He's relaxing.
Wait, hold on.
You're gonna be all right.
The only reason why I raised my voice is because JJ is speaking so loudly.
I know, man. And
hey, listen. Hey, my presentation already ready, Jabari.
All right. Everybody got to get out now. We out. I'm brother Zion. Peace, brother. Hey, Mighty Hebrew, you want to do this tomorrow? We're gonna do it tomorrow, brother. All right, we'll do this tomorrow, Prince. All right, so brother Jabari and brother Zion, y'all can go ahead and close this thing out. Brother Zion, you got the floor.
I'm gonna allow brother Jabari to go first because I opened. I'll close last.
All right, brother Jabari, are you good with that? It's all right. Just close out, Jabari.
I can close. I don't have a problem closing. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Let me first say that I enjoy debating Zion. I think that he's an interesting character. He does his research, so doing research makes him interesting. And there are a lot of folks that I end up debating sometimes online that don't do any reading, they don't do any research. They just, maybe they'll just say the Bible is the word of God and this is what we'll do. That's not going to be what Zion does. And so I appreciate having conversations with him. Having said that, I want to clearly say that the topic is about whether Sumer should be considered the origin of civilization over Kemet. And I want to clearly say to you that there were a lot of things that we did tonight that I think are really interesting, but I want you to tally all of the problems that we have with Zion's arguments. We see his entire book is about this topic. And I know that some of you have read the book. It's the entire book. It's not one chapter, it's the entire book. So if you think that I can't bring up your book that you're selling right now when it's about the topic, that's crazy. That's not an ad hominem. That is me simply dealing with the issue. I also want us to acknowledge that Zion continued to say that Sheikh Anta Diop was wrong. I told him, brother, leave it alone. He would not. And clearly you can see that the person who was wrong was not Sheikh Anta Diop. It was actually Zion. And I'm expecting to still receive his letter of apology. You can forward it to me and I will forward it on to the Diop family. I also want you to recognize that when we're talking about which civilization actually is more influential and earlier. If you look at Zion's own dates, there is a problem with his dates. He says that certain things aren't civilization, and then he shows us lots of things in Sumer that aren't civilization. And when you look at the date of what he says civilization occurs in, you will see that that is later than the date that we can attest for ancient Kemet. So there are lots of problems. I hope that he goes back and does a little bit more tidying up. I know that he will, because that's the kind of debater that he's going to be. I'm looking forward to our discussion. I hope that it remains scholarly. I have not used any ad hominems against Zion. How could I do that? All I would like us to do is to talk about the topic. We can contest each other about our ideas, but we should be talking about the topic that we're talking about. And we will truly be able to come to a better understanding of this topic for our people. Finally, I want you to hear that Zion said that he didn't want to acknowledge, he kind of didn't want to acknowledge that he believes that Abraham is a historic character. I had to tease it out of him. And then he says, well, I told you that this is a historical debate, not about belief. That's not the question I asked you. I asked you, do you believe Abraham to be a historical character? He finally acknowledged that he does. And I want us to understand the reason why we're having this discussion, because they're trying to set the Bible as primary to the stories that come out of Kemet and come out of the rest of Africa. That's the modus operandi. Watch it carefully. You're going to see it in the Hebrew Israelite community. You're going to see it in the Christian apologetic community. It doesn't have a historical base, and I will stand to squash it every single time. Peace.
Peace. All right, Brother Zion, you on the floor, brother.
All right, thank you. I thought, it's been a while since I've been here, but I thought that at HOK, when a person leads the dialogue, they close, someone else closed it, is allowed to close the dialogue. So I led the dialogue, so I should be able to have the closing words.
Yes, you got it, brother.
Thank you. So I say that to say this. This was a fairly good discussion. I certainly came prepared to have a real good dialogue, a good scholarly dialogue, without talking about, a person's personal ability to assess information. I really wanted to just keep it to the topic. I don't think Jabari is prepared or adequately equipped to touch this topic. I think that he proved that in more ways than one tonight. I asked him some very simple questions that children in junior high school and high school can certainly answer. So him as a college professor is interested in why he refused all night to deal with the definition of the actual topic of this dialogue. He did not want to define civilization, even though he earlier admitted that he holds to 17,000 BC. By the way, Sarnetta, I hope you don't flag me when I go back and I play that clip where he says that Kemet is a civilization in 15,000 BCE. Yes, he came back and cleared it up and said, well, not a full-blown civilization, but he certainly said that. He has to wear the pseudo hat for all of eternity for that. No scholar alive would hold to that. Also, he said some things that were really blatantly dishonest. Mighty Hebrew asked him, what's the scholarly consensus for civilization? And he said, well, I don't really agree with you that that's the scholarly consensus on civilization. That's an entire lie. The current academic scholarly consensus for civilization, of which I'm prepared to show in a debate, definitely shows that Sumer is still older than Kemet. That is the current academic consensus. That means Jabari is blatantly lying at this point. Lastly, I want to say this. The word civilization is based on the Latin word civitas, which denotes a city. There are certain things that are integral to the formation and the curation of a city. A city requires a supply of food. At that time in history, you're dealing with hydraulic civilizations that depend upon the flow of water in order to maintain their societies. So you had to have sophisticated systems of irrigation. Also, in order to have a city, you need a rule of law, because you need people to be curtailed in terms of their behavior in order to just cope and compensate with the basic requirement for people socializing day to day. You also need division of labor when you have a city, which, remember, that's at the foundation of the word civilization. So in a division of labor, in the hunter-gathering stage, people are hunting and they're gathering, and they're not really staying anywhere. They might stay a couple of days, maybe even a couple of months. That's called camping. But they don't actually settle in the region. A settlement in academia is people in a region hundreds of years. Encampment doesn't have to be that long. That is referred to academically when you're speaking about hunter-gatherers, not a civilization. So I think that, again, all of the markers for civilization are important to understanding, such as writing in a city. A city needs a form of record keeping. Jabari didn't address any of those issues. Instead, Jabari wanted to address Zion Lex's book. He wanted to talk about Abraham being historical because those are cheap talking points in the conscious community that is clever to take away from the topic. But one thing about me, and I'm hoping you, I'm intelligent enough to peep game. Jabari cannot deal with the issue. That's why he didn't come to debate the issue tonight in a very sly way. What he came to do tonight was ad hominem attacks. Peace.
All right, peace, man. I want to say thank you to Brother Jabari. Always thank you to you, Brother Lex. Both of y'all did a great job, and I'm glad y'all kept it like that. You know, of course, it was some jabs thrown, nothing real serious where y'all did any personal attacks. And this is what a debate. This is what debate's supposed to be about. You know, y'all setting the standard for what debate's supposed to be about. And so we'll talk offline when we really want to get into the body of it. All right. And so with that, I want to say peace and black power to everybody. Thank all the people who came through and showed love. All right. Y'all brothers can leave now if y'all wish to. Y'all can leave. Y'all go ahead. Close out for y'all. Let the people know.
What'd you say? I'm sorry. I
said let the people know. You can say peace and get up out of here.
Peace. We'll see you soon.
Peace, man. Peace, man. Jabari, we will have that dinner.
Yes, we still
we'll have that dinner, man.
We still need to. All right.
We'll have that dinner. All right, peace.
All right, man. I want to shout out a couple of people. Thank y'all for coming through once again. All right. Oliver McCraw. Shout out to Oliver McCraw. Thank you for your donation. All right. Nakia,